Ready?
Ready, yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
I know.
I'm appalled.
I know.
Okay.
How are you?
Great. How are you doing?
Okay, I think we're about ready to start. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Before we do roll call, I would like to welcome our new commissioners, Mr. Andrew Seal, here to my left, and Mr. Reed Olson down here at the end.
Yay.
We're
Welcome,
absolutely
guys.
excited to have them.
Yes.
We'll try to go easy on them this evening. Okay,
Fire.
let's begin with roll call.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Holland.
Here.
Commissioner Seal.
Here.
Commissioner Olson.
Here.
Commissioner Fitzgerald.
Here.
Commissioner Casanelli.
Here.
Commissioner Perot.
Here.
And Commissioner McCarville is absent.
Sir.
Okay. Next is the adoption of the agenda. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
Madam Chair, I move we adopt agenda for January 17th. Or, I'm sorry, February 7th. I'm looking at the wrong thing. Excuse me.
Second. It has been moved and seconded to adopt the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next on the agenda, number 3, is the consent agenda to approve the minutes of the January 17, 2019 Planning and Zoning meeting. Can I get a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second. It has been moved and seconded to adopt the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So next we are going to explain the public hearing process and share a little bit about how this evening's meeting will go. We will open each item individually and then start with the staff report. The staff will report their findings regarding how the item adheres to our comprehensive plan and the Uniform Development Code with the staff's recommendations. After the staff have made their presentation, the applicant will come forward to present their case for the approval of their application and respond to any staff comments. The applicant will have 15 minutes to make their presentation. After the applicant has finished, we will open up for public testimony. There is a sign-up sheet in the back, and actually we now have those on iPads there on the back table for anybody who wishes to testify. Any person testifying will come forward and be allowed 3 minutes. If they are speaking for a larger group, like an HOA, and there is a show of hands to represent the group, they will be given up to 10 minutes. After all testimony has been heard, the applicant will be given another 10 minutes to have an opportunity to come back and respond if they desire to do so. We will then close the public hearing, and the commissioners will have the opportunity to discuss and hopefully be able to make a recommendation to City Council or a final decision if necessary. So at this time, we will open the public hearing that has been continued from December 20th, 2018 for the Alpine Townhouse Subdivision H20180090, and we'll begin with the staff report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. This project has been in front of you for a couple times now, so hopefully we'll get some resolution this evening. I just want to get everyone reoriented with the project and kind of update you as to what they've proposed, since it's been several months since you've heard the whole this application in its entirety. So the site's located on the southeast corner, or excuse me, the northeast corner of Ustick and Linder Roads. It's approximately 3.99 acres of land. It's currently zoned CC in the city. As you recall, back in 2014, the city did annex this property in. As part of the annexation of that property, there was a development agreement that showed a concept plan that had commercial uses on this particular property, and that's currently the recorded DA that governs the development of the site. As we mentioned to you back when we first brought this to you in November, the applicant is processing a DA modification before City Council on this application. You are not taking action on that particular application, but in order for that use to move forward on this site, that DA does need to be amended, and that concept plan tied to that development agreement needs to be amended. So keep that in mind as you deliberate on this application. So back on the 20th, I provided a staff memo to you and gave you a quick update as to what had transpired. If you recall, during that hearing, the commission was concerned that although this is a small piece, the applicant was proposing quite a bit. They had like an office lot on it and then some multifamily. They came back to you on the 20th, went the opposite direction. They took off the commercial component and made it all residential with the plan that's before you now. So this does consist of a 15 build, so they're asking for a conditional use permit and a preliminary plat to develop 60 residential units on the site and a mixed-use community designation. As we testified at the last hearing, we informed you that mixed-use community designations require a minimum of 3 land use types. Again, in my memo that I prepared for you, I had stated that it's in your purview to find this being consistent with the comprehensive plan. If you feel that this site is appropriate for a single use, that's certainly within your purview. But based on looking back through the record, it was from my perspective of looking back at the record, it was the intent of this commission to have at least 2 land uses on this particular property and some commercial, and that would happen in conjunction with the property to the north. And so the applicant was here on the 20th testifying to that effect. You heard from the new owners of the land. They said they wanted more time to work with the applicant and bring back another revised plan. So that's what the applicant's done. And that's part of the public record that I provided to you. So this is the exhibit that staff received early in the week. So you can see here the applicant still is depicting the single family, the single use on their particular project, the fourplex units at a total of 60 units to the acre, transitioning with some 55 and older multifamily, some commercial along Linder, and then some townhomes along the north boundary. To the east, we have some commercial along the U-stick frontage, and then transitioning to single-family homes. I would mention to you that this isn't ideally the typical way that we see the mixed-use developments develop. You usually have commercial transition to higher density and then feather out to single-family. So I also want to point out to you that the plan here, you can't tie the applicant to this concept or this layout. Your purview is really the 3.99 acres and trying to determine whether or not that single use is right for this particular property. So I at least wanted to get back and at least refresh your memory on what was discussed and what you wanted the applicant to come back with. I'd also mention to you that the access points that are showing on at least the properties to the north and to the east are conceptual in nature as well. So they will have to go back through the process, get ACHD's approval. So if you can see my cursor here, you're seeing 3 access points. These are best guesses at this point. There's no certainty that ACHD or the city would approve that many access points to this particular development. Now, what I recall as part of our conversation when we were here is the commission was amenable to floating that mixed-use designation when the property to the north came in for annexation. The way I heard things was, if you can see my cursor, I thought you wanted them to strip out commercial along some of their frontage on the Linder side and float that up or to the north, so the commercial node would be right at the intersection and then transition to their residential and then float to single family. Again, the plan that's before you isn't portrayed that way. So I would remind Commission that when we came back before you in November, we did recommend denial, and at this point, that's where staff's recommendation stands, is for denial. I'll go ahead and conclude my presentation, and I'll stand for any other questions, additional questions you may have.
Any questions for staff?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Fitzgerald?
Bill, do you understand, my understanding is the single-family, multifamily section that is around it is single owner, is that correct, or is that multiple owners?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, I'm not sure. When I looked at the record back on the 20th, sounds like there's multiple owners that own the northern property and then a single owner to the east, if I'm correct.
You have 2 to 3 owners, is my understanding.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Okay, would the applicant like to come forward, please? Please state your name and address for the record.
Madam Chair, members of the Commission, for the record, my name's Steve Arnold. I'm with A-Team Land Consultants. Business address is 1785 Whisper Cove, Boise, 83709. I'll kind of give you a rough recap for the new commissioners here, kind of our project. We started out originally with 2 uses on the site, with an office building and then the multifamily. And at our last hearing, one of the directions from the commission was to go work with a neighboring property on a circulation plan. So at that time, we agreed to table the site so that we can meet with them. We have had that chance to meet with them, and the developer has had communications with them. We prepared this map, and it's my understanding that they're in agreement with what we were proposing as a circulation plan. I put these access points on here based on my experience with ACHD. You know, ACHD requires a minimum of 660 feet from the intersection before you can get full access. And that was what we were presenting to the commission, that, you know, this site had been a retail office use, and it's been for sale for the last 5-6 years with no outcome because of the concerns, the issues that people had with buying something with limited access. We started out showing an access point on Linder, and then we, after discussion with the commission, that we were going to, the direction from this board was to go with the single use because the two uses didn't seem to blend very well. And it was really difficult to make something like that on such a small site that mix in there. So the direction first to go around was to eliminate that. Then when we eliminated that use, we also got rid of the access point onto Linder. We were working with the neighbors to the north, and we decided at that point that, you know, the access onto Linder would be best shifted further to the north, thus getting further away from the intersection. And that would be right in, right out. The middle one, I think, you know, based on ACHD's policies, we could have that. You know, granted, you're not acting on that tonight, but I laid this out based on my best knowledge with ACHD. And then we also continued cross-access to the east so that that could eventually be connected to a public street. I put the public streets all on intersections where there's already public streets on the other side of the road, or where those other intersections will most likely end up. So that's kind of the thought behind this circulation plan. For those new commissioners as well, this site, we've got just about an acre of open space. So we're providing 3 amenities, a putting green, dog park, actually there's 4, and then we've got a community garden area, and then at the hard corner we're doing, you know, another sitting area with some open art at that look at the intersection. We don't have that completely figured out right now, but we've got an area reserved for that. Unlike a lot of other multifamily, we're providing quite a bit of additional parking spaces. We've got 134 shown, 120 is required by code. The building, I don't know if the building is fairly unique. This developer has done several of the projects in the valley. In Meridian, we've gotten the Shallow Creek, Timber Grove, and Stones Throw. And the unique part about this building is you've got an apartment feel, a townhouse feel, but it is an apartment building. Each of the units, it has its own, there's no one living above you. So there's an entrance on all 4 sides of the building. So it's not your typical, you know, garden style walk up. They're a very attractive building that rents out very well, and they get a very good rent for them. So the product type that we're putting in there is of a higher quality than most apartments that you see. I know when working with Bill earlier, that was some of the thoughts with our amenities and buildings, was to create kind of that premier multifamily project. So it was my understanding, and maybe I'm confused with this, but the staff, based on some of the direction from the commission and the changes that we did in the plan gave us conditions that could be conditions of approval. And I thought at our last hearing when I asked the commission, you know, if we eliminated the office use, was this something, a direction that the commission would go towards? And I thought at the time that we had staff's recommendation of approval at that time. So, Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, we went from the recommendation for denial to working here with the commission, showing how things would circulate in the area, showing how we could float that commercial component, and that was the last direction I understood.
So, Madam Chair, members of the commission, I don't want to take too much of the applicant's time here because he does get 15 minutes, but I did want to go back to the memo that I did prepare. If you recall, staff's recommendation has always been for denial on this project. The way I said in the staff's memo that I prepared for you is that we were supportive of the revised layout for the single use, but it's predicated on this commission's body to determine whether or not a single use is appropriate for this site. And we prepared some draft conditions in case you felt inclined to approve this use on this particular property. So in no way has staff changed their recommendation. What we've done is set you up to feel like if the applicant has provided just enough justification or argument for a single use for this particular property, it was trying to set you up. If you felt swayed that he was more persuasive than staff's stance on it, then you had an opportunity, and we had the ability for you to look at some conditions and move this forward to our city council. That was the intent behind that. It wasn't staff did not change their recommendation on the project.
Thanks, Bill, for the clarification. So, for the new commissioners, again, the reason that we were coming in with a single use is we couldn't get access to pencil with the proposed commercial. We would need to get cross access to the neighboring properties in order for that to work. And frankly, the way ACHD's policies have changed, this property was originally approved with full access onto U-Stick and right in, right out on Linder. ACHD has since changed their access policies, which restricted both to right in, right out. So in our opinion, it makes more sense to put up a commercial use, and what you have in front of you is what was previously, is what has been approved. But that use with those access points right now is no longer feasible. So what we're asking the P&Z, the commission, to do is to float, if their desires to have commercial here, further to the north or east to where there's better access points. I guess with that, I will stand for any questions.
Any questions for the applicant?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Casanelli.
Steve, I've got a couple of questions, I guess. Looking back at that, can you pull up that new drawing, Bill? Thank you. The property to the east, the commercial there, have you talked to the owner there? Or are you just drawing that out as that?
Commissioner Casanelli, no, that we have not had communications with that owner. The owners to the north of us has been the most vocal. That cross access could either stay, or, you know, if they develop in the future and they want just all single family use, or they come in with a use that's not compatible with the multifamily, that cross access doesn't need to be extended for our use or theirs. I just put it in there as an example of how that would work. I showed the commercial up front on U-Stick there, because there again, you've got the future intersection of a road that will eventually go north and tie into the stub. And that location, the commercial use would have full access to U-Stick Road.
But you haven't had any communications with them?
No direct communications.
Okay. The other thing, and my understanding, so kind of, I don't know if everybody else is on the same page here with me, but my understanding from the last time that we were together was not to come back with just a circulation plan, but I was thinking that the communication you were going to have with the owner to the north was really to develop, to come back with a plan for full development and really turning that entire area into the multi-use with, you know, with hopefully three different types of use there, and not just a circulation plan. I don't know, kind of see what others think, but that was my thought. But you came back and you're saying that your takeaway from last time was to come back with a circulation plan. Is that correct on that?
Yeah, so at the last meeting that we had the representative of the owner, the buyer to the north. He said, you know, basically timeout, we want to look, we're buying this property, we want to make sure that this works for our site. And that's when the commission tabled it at that time. We then met with them and said, look, you know, we could float this either way. The cross-access point on any, you know, part of our north boundary. And, you know, they just haven't, I think they're a long ways away from submitting a development, but it was, at that time, I don't think the commission was directing them to submit application or to come up with a specific plan. I think the direction was for us to go work with them to make sure that they were acceptable with the location.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Fitzgerald?
And I will somewhat echo what you said, because I think, you know, I appreciate all the work you've done, and the circulation plan was one of the concepts, was where the access points are going to be. I think the concept, if we're going to float this multi-use up into that, we have to have more than, I think what we're seeing, maybe that's what we're trying to get across. I think what's highest and best use versus what was already approved versus what you guys are bringing to us now, and how does that, because this is a hard corner, it is a commercial corner somewhat that's already been approved, and what fits best there. And I understand the access points component you're talking about. I think my thought was access points also, but also what are you bringing up there? And I think that the heat map, or I mean the bubble map is helpful, but I'm not sure it gives us all the pieces we were looking for.
Great.
Well said, thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant?
If I may, the problem with doing that is we've submitted an application. I could show you whatever you want on that, and there's not a real application on that piece of property. What you have before you tonight is 3.9 acres of what we're proposing. And even though you see that, I mean, you're not acting on that. And that's why I tried to leave kind of a loose bubble concept of how things would work. When you get into the specific commercial buildings, I mean, you'll have different layouts for all of that, and you know that could be, you know, years down the road before that ever gets defined with a end user. So that's why I didn't. I mean, I can't. It would be deceiving to you guys if I did it just to show you something that worked, and you know, I'm not about that.
Questions? Okay, thank you very much. Do we have anyone signed up to testify?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We do have one, Denise Lefevre.
Okay. Please come forward.
Hello, my name is Denise Lefevre, and I live at 706 North Salvia Way. And my mom actually lives in the neighborhood right behind this. And what we're looking at here is right there, we've already discussed it. It's zone commercial. This is a hard corner. Right across here, you have Ustick that has been expanded to 4 lanes. We're going to be expanding Linder to 4 lanes. They're talking, it was just in the mayor's address, that they're looking at putting a bridge over Ustick. What a sweet, sweet corner this is for commercial. Access all the way to Cuna, all the way to Eagle. You've got rooftops, you've got traffic counts. Let's see if we can figure out how to change this. You already saw that. That's what was proposed. It has been proposed as a commercial. Right here, back in 2014, when this application went through, there was a lot of holes in here that didn't have rooftops. Since then, those have all filled in and developed. Sawtooth is done. White Castle's done. I can go on with lists of houses that are in these blank spaces from back there. We just talked about the Linder Road U-stick and the expansions and where it's going to go and how far that road's going to go from Cuna all the way to Eagle. It's a great, sweet, hard corner in an area that is desperate for commercial. Try to find a restaurant, go up to Rudy's, it's busy all the time. Go to Gino's, is busy all the time. Homestead, Flat House, there's just not enough commercial in this area to service the area that's there. Right here, I'm not sure if everybody's already seen this or not. These are the permits that have already been pulled for multifamily. There are a lot of permits that have been pulled, especially last year, 1,128 units permitted. This year alone, over 300 permitted. That doesn't even count the number of annex that haven't been permitted yet. We have a lot of multifamily properties on the north side of I-84. Furthermore, this development fails to meet some of the things that we like to see in multifamily developments. One, it's not located near a park. Nearby definition, when you talk to folks, it's a quarter of a mile. This isn't near a park. It's not near an employment center. That's another area that we like to locate those at. In addition, we are right in the middle of a comprehensive plan. The area that's right around that is open. It's a prime area to go back through and do a backage road and actually allow even more commercial to go in there. Once again, you've got rooftops now that didn't exist back in 2014. You've got lanes. You've got property to the north that's now available for redevelopment where the owner in the past didn't want to sell. He liked having a sheep there. I'd like you to deny this application. I think the conceptual plan is not well put together. It isn't in consensus with the other owners. If you don't deny it today, at least give the applicant an opportunity to withdraw and come back with a co-application with the other owners around it.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the room who would like to testify? Okay, excellent. Please come forward. State your name and address for the record.
Matt Nauman, 6202 South McDermott in Nampa. Okay. But I work for Cushman & Wakefield. I'm actually the selling broker on this land. And so I just wanted to respond to her comments a little bit. I also have the land to the south for sale. And so I've been working on these two parcels for over 2 years. I have talked to CVS, to Walgreens, to every gas station in the town, to fast food, to retail strip center people. No retail wants to be here. Everyone wants to be at 10 Mile and Chinden, Linder and Chinden, 10 Mile and Chinden, 10 Mile and McMillan. That's where all the retail is going. That's where all the strip centers going. We've tried to sell this land to every retail user we can find, and there's none that want to be on this corner. And so, you're, in my opinion, hurting the landowner, basically saying you can't sell your land because there's no retail that wants to be there. And so I'm not disagreeing that it would be a good retail corner if you could find some retail that wants to be there, and there is not. For 2 years, I've reached out to everybody I can reach out to. And so, I just ask that you take that into consideration when you're trying to decide what to do with this parcel, and go from there.
Thank you. What have been the reasons they've given for not being interested in that corner, if I may ask?
Well, so there's gas station, you've got Fast Eddie's just down the way, and then Maverick just built a huge one down the other way. So they don't feel there's a need for gas station. Then turn to CVS and Walgreens. Walgreens has one a mile away, and CVS has no desire to be that close. They feel like Walgreens has saturated that area. Fast food, they want more traffic counts. They want to be in a different area. And so, the strip centers with your Costco's and your Wincos and everything going on at Chinden, it's just there's more synergy. And so there's just not the desire for the retail to be in this area. And so, is there maybe some niche, a dentist or a doctor's office that you could put in there? Potentially. But outside of that, you're not going to get your high-end retail or your strip malls and those sorts of things are not going to end up on this corner. So if it's going to be commercial, the only commercial you're going to get to go there is going to be, a dentist or a doctor's office that, wants to be in that location.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the room that would like to testify?
Good evening. My name is Sally Reynolds. I reside at 1166 West Bacall Street in Meridian. So I'm actually on the new steering committee for the comprehensive plan for the city of Meridian. And I just wanted to stand as a member of that comprehensive plan committee and remind everyone that we are in the middle of redoing that. And there have been so many changes since the last comp plan that we're making some really big changes to it right now. So for this corner to be changed into residential from commercial at this time, I don't think it is the right time to do that. I do understand that sometimes it can be a struggle to have commercial entities who are interested in the land, but I think that we do have the rooftops, and I think that with the expansion of Linder Village, we will have the traffic counts, and I think that with Costco and Winco both being approved, with this corner being as hard as it is, I think that the commercial will come forward. It might not be in the timeline that the applicant wants, but I think that it will happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. If there's no one else here to testify, would the applicant like to come forward? Do you have anything else to share with us?
No, I guess, Madam Chair, members of the commission, what I would add to that, there's been a statement about the demand for the commercial and retail, and you've got another commercial broker up here telling you he's worked on it for several years and it just hasn't worked. Increased traffic's not going to increase access, and the key there is access. You've got a proposed for multifamily that doesn't need that high level of access that both commercial or retail will need. So if there ever is the demand or the traffic increases, that doesn't increase ACHD's ability to grant this parcel access. There was a statement about the number of multifamily, the number of permits, and that there's too much. Well, we're at a 2.3% vacancy in Ada County. A normal vacancies rate is around 4 to 5. There is a huge demand right now for that type of living, and that location, although it's not good for retail or commercial, it will work fine for multifamily. That's all I have to add, and I'll stand for questions.
Any questions for the applicant? Great, thank you.
Thanks.
At this time, can I get a motion to close the public hearing?
Madam Chair, I move we close public hearing on H 2018-0090.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to close the public hearing for Alpine Townhouse Subdivision H2010090. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
None opposed? Motion carries. Who would like to begin?
Let the new guys go. I'll throw it out there. I'm definitely inclined to go with staff's recommendation on this. I know that, what we've heard that, retail doesn't want to go in there right now, and I get that. I don't think this is a bad plan for the corner, but I believe it has to interact with that to get that mixed use. It's got to work with that property to the north and possibly even that little sliver to the east, and it may take a long time. It may take a couple years to finally get that whole parcel together. But I think it's got to be done right, and maybe ultimately what will be built there are You know, is this, are these fourplexes to fit in with everything else there? But I just, as it stands on its own, it doesn't work by its own without integrating those other pieces.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Fitzgerald.
And Steve, I give you a ton of credit for being patient with us. The challenge I have is similar to what Commissioner Castanelli said. We have a pretty singular shot to do that area well, and I think without having an understanding of how to float that north with mixed use, I'm not sure if it fits, right? Individually, and then the highest and best use is what's already there, or if we have to wait a little bit longer to make sure we do it right. So I'm kind of inclined to go along with staff as well. But I'd love to hear my other commissioners' comments.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Holland.
You know, I want to thank the applicant too for coming back. This is the third time we've heard this application, and I think they've been trying to be very flexible and trying to work with the property owners up north. As far as the site plan itself, if we could just pick it up and move it into a high-density subdivision, I think it would be a great fit. I like the site plan. I think they've done a very good job of bringing additional amenities, having plenty of parking, having lots of green space. It's very creative. It looks nice. It's a different kind of product than we have from a lot of the other multifamily projects. So I'm torn because as a site plan, I mean, if I look at this just by itself, I really like the concept of it, and I think it would be a great fit for Meridian. I wish it was a 10-acre parcel so that we couldn't have to worry about the access issues, but it is a real concern for this parcel developing in the future. I wish that we could have a joint application where they could work together to do a really nice master planned section of town, because it is a corner that it's a high visibility corner, and it's going to only continue growing in visibility, especially with some of those roadway improvements coming up. The challenge too is, you know, we could approve it and hope for the best with what happens with the property to the north, but that site plan has not in front of us, and we can't consider it really as part of this application, and that's where I'm stuck too. Because I really like this, I like the layout of it, and it's a tough spot to be in. I think I agree with the other comments that have been made.
Thank you.
You said it best.
Yes, you did it very articulately.
Any additional?
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, but
Commissioner
I don't
Olson.
believe any comment I could make would add to the conversation at this time.
Well, this is where our position becomes difficult, because we're always wanting to balance what is best for the applicant with what's best for the community, and that's what we are here for. And so I do completely agree with my fellow commissioners, and I think Commissioner Holland stated it very well, that the applicant's done a beautiful job with the development as it is, and I think it would be a great addition to a larger mixed-use community, and I also am in agreement with staff, not because of the individual project itself, but just because it's single use in a multi-use area, and we have to just take into account this specific piece, and it would be fantastic to know what was going on in the surrounding properties, but we don't at this time. So that being said, do we have a motion?
Madam Chair, one other thought just to throw out before we make a motion. I know in the first site plan we got on this project, there was some commercial initially proposed on the west side for a small office unit. Not that I want the applicant to come back another time, but I'm wondering if that's something we wanted to offer up as another alternative if they wanted to reconfigure it one more time to add commercial back in, or if we think that we're just at the spot where we need to.
Madam Chair, I'll comment. I think that for me, it didn't work. I know we went from a sixplex to an office and I think it didn't flow well. I think this site plan looks great. It has the open space we were looking for. It's just, it's the piece that, if I could slide it up and slide a commercial piece underneath it, I would do it in a heartbeat. It's just, I don't think that fit either. And that's my personal opinion.
The challenge then becomes, if there is an additional commercial that goes into the north, how that site's going to have access, because it's going to be so much farther north. The full access will be so much farther north than the commercial pad. Okay. Anyone else have anything? to share?
Additional thoughts?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Casanelli.
after considering all staff applicant public testimony, I move to recommend denial to the City Council of file number H-2018-0090 as presented during the hearing date on February 7th, 2019. For the following reasons, is it does not fit current zoning.
Thank you.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to deny the application Alpine Townhouse Subdivision H2018-0090.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
can I just note that you're recommending denial rather than denial?
Correct. That is right. Thank you, Commissioner Holland. We are recommending denial to City Council. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we will open the public hearing, continued from January 17, 2019, for Pine Fourplex, H201-0135. Let's begin with the staff report.
Members of the commission, the next application before you is a request for a conditional use permit. This site consists of 0.29 of an acre of land. It's zoned R15 and located at 645 West Pine Avenue. Adjacent land uses and zoning are single-family residential and multifamily residential uses in the R15 and R4 zoning districts. There is currently one single-family residential property on this site. The comprehensive plan future land use designation is medium density residential, which is 3 to 8 units per acre. The applicant is requesting a conditional use permit for a multifamily residential development consisting of 4 units on 0.29 of an acre of land in the R15 zoning district. The site is proposed to develop with one 2-story multifamily fourplex structure with each unit containing 2 bedrooms. Access is provided via West Pine Avenue. A cross-access easement is required to be granted to the adjoining property to the west for future shared access of the driveway via Pine. Off-street parking is proposed in accord with the minimum UDC standards. Based on 4 2-bedroom units, a minimum of 8 spaces are required, with 2 of those being in a covered carport or garage. A total of 9 spaces are provided, with 4 of those in a covered carport. On-street parking is also available for guest parking along Pine Avenue. Private as well as common open space is proposed in accord with UDC standards. A piece of public art to be selected in the future and a barbecue area with tables and seating are proposed as amenities for the development. Concept building elevations were submitted as shown, with materials consisting of board and batten and horizontal lap siding with stone veneer accents and stained wood trim and fascia with architectural asphalt shingles on the roof. Written testimony has been received from Amanda Bidwell, the applicant's representative. She is in agreement with the staff report, and staff is recommending approval of the requested conditional use permit as the application is in compliance with the minimum UDC standards for the use. Staff will stand for any questions.
Thank you, Sonia. Any questions for staff?
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Fitzgerald?
Sonia, maybe I can't count, but so are we counting, so I thought there was 8 spaces. Am I?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Okay, so the handicap side, okay, maybe I'm losing my mind. Okay, thank you.
The southern 4 spaces are covered.
Got it, okay.
Carport.
Thank you for the clarification.
Okay. Will the applicant please come forward?
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners, and thank you, Sonia. My name is Amanda Bidwell. Yeah, sorry. My name is Amanda Bidwell with New Design Architecture at 725 East 2nd Street in Meridian, 83686. As Sonia mentioned, we're looking at putting a fourplex in on this property. We do have 9 parking stalls, which is above the code minimum. I know that parking can become an issue in a lot of these areas, so we were trying to fit in as many as we could. We're providing 2 amenities for this site. There's going to be a barbecue area to the south in conjunction with an open grass area. In addition, we're proposing some public artwork be presented on the site as our second amenity. We looked at doing patios and private open space that was generous as well, meeting and exceeding code minimums. The units inside are 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom units. We're just hoping to bring some variety to the area, and with that, I will stand for any questions.
Any questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you. Do we have anyone signed up to testify?
We do not, Madam Chair.
Is there anyone present in the room who would like to testify? None? Okay. Well, if the applicant doesn't have anything further to add, I'll call for a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
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 None opposed. Motion carries.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Fitzgerald.
just to go on the record, I was looking at the original site plan that has 8 parking spots, so I can count first. But secondly, the revised site plan is what I was looking at my computer, not yours. Sorry, Sonia. I think we've done this down Pine Street several times. I think we're getting close to Old Town. I think it's a nice design. It matches within the neighborhood. I think there's several of these redevelopment type plans down there. I think it looks nice. The architecture looks good. I have no problem, ma'am.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Casanelli.
stay on this side before moving that way. I'll echo those comments for the most part. My only concern is the parking. One of the comments in there from ACHD was that the on-street parking could eventually go away if ACHD decides to do something different with Pine down the road. So while it's there now, we may lose that. So that would be my only concern. But I think it fits in there with some of the things that are going in there. I don't have any major concerns other than that. And the only other thing I wanted to say is, Amanda, I don't know if you remember me, but how are you doing? Good to see you. But those are my comments.
Any other thoughts, commissioners? No? Okay. Would like to make a motion?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Fitzgerald.
after considering all staff, applicant, and public testimony, I move to approve file number H2018-0135 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of February 7th, 2019.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the conditional use permit for H2018-0135. All those in favor say aye.
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 None opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations. Next on the agenda is the public hearing for Raspberry Villas H2018-0130. And we will open for the staff report.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, the next applications before you are a request for rezone and a preliminary plat. This site consists of 1.43 acres of land. It's zoned R8 and LO, and it's located at 1434 and 1492 Star Drive. Adjacent land use and zoning are single-family residential uses, zoned R8 and R4, office and assisted living facility zoned LO. This property was annexed back in 2003 with R8 and LO zoning districts, mostly LO, just a sliver of R8 zoning, and was part of a planned development that anticipated office uses developing on this site. The comprehensive plan future land use map designation, there's actually 2 for this property. The first is medium density residential, which is 3 to 8 units per acre, and that consists of 0.78 approximately acre of an acre. And mixed-use neighborhood with a neighborhood center overlay, which consists of approximately 0.65 of an acre of land. The applicant is proposing a rezone of 1.86 acres of land from the R8 and LO zoning districts to the R15 district for the development of 16 attached and detached single-family residential homes at a gross density of 11.2 units per acre, consistent with the density desired in the mixed-use neighborhood designated area of 6 to 12 units per acre. A preliminary plat is proposed as shown that is a re-subdivision of Raspberry Crossing subdivision. It consists of 16 building lots and 4 common lots on 1.43 acres of land. Parking is proposed for each lot in accord with the minimum UDC standards. Access is proposed via East Star Drive and North Bright Angel Avenue. So if you see here, there's actually a common driveway that these units will be accessing Star Drive from. And then there's also another common driveway here that these units back here will be accessing Bright Angel from. These units here that front on Bright Angel would be directly accessing the street. Because this site is below 5 acres in size, qualified open space and site amenities are not required. However, the applicant is working with the Raspberry Crossing Homeowners Association to potentially include this development in the existing homeowners association, which would provide residents with access to existing common areas and site amenities and provide the HOA with additional dues that could be used to maintain those areas. The original concept elevations submitted with this application were not consistent with the building footprints depicted on the proposed plat. Since that time, the applicant has submitted revised elevations as shown that are consistent with the footprint shown on the plat. All attached structures are required to comply with the design standards in the Architectural Standards Manual. Written testimony has been received from Marilyn Cox. She is against the proposed density, feels it's too high, and then also due to traffic concerns. Also from Stanley Stinson Sr., he's against the proposed zone change due to all of the extra cars, children, and animals in a small confined space on a busy street. And the proposed homes don't blend in with those in Alexandria subdivision across the street. Staff is recommending approval as staff finds the proposed development meets the minimum UDC standards for development. Staff will stand for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for staff?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Seal.
As far as them, well, might want to wait on this question, but them being part of the HOA, the existing HOA, is there anything that they will offer up in order to make that something that's, something that they can coexist together with? Basically meaning, will they offer up a portion of their plat here in order to make a common area that will work for both?
Chairman Perot, Commissioner Seal, I'm unsure of that, but I'm sure the applicant can answer that for you.
Sonia, can you share the significance of the NC overlay in relationship? I'm not familiar with that.
Well, we're looking for more pedestrian-oriented development, more density in those areas.
Okay.
Short version.
And Madam Chair,
Mr. Fitzgerald?
Sonia, there's a daycare right across the street. It was my understanding, correct?
Yes, to the south.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. That's all the questions for staff. Would the applicant please come forward? Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the Commission. My name is Corinne Graham with Civil Site Works, 921 South Orchard, Suite 200, Boise, Idaho 83705. Sonia, do you have my PowerPoint, or do I need to upload?
Oh.
So
Corinne, did you give us one?
I did email one to you. I have a flash drive as well.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
All right, sorry about that. So I'm here tonight on behalf of the applicant for a rezone request and preliminary plat application for Raspberry Point Villas subdivision. The project site is located on Star Drive and Bright Angel Avenue, just west of Locust Grove Road between McMillan and Ustick Roads. The project site is currently lots 1 through 3, block 6 of Raspberry Crossing subdivision with zoning designations of LO and R8. The requested zoning is for R15, medium-high density residential. The comprehensive plan is a combination of MDR, medium density residential, and MUN, mixed-use neighborhood, with an NC neighborhood center overlay. Here's a map of the project site with its current zoning designations. The R8 lot is a common lot as part of Raspberry Crossing subdivision that was formally created to buffer the residential and proposed office uses. This is a blow-up of the future land use map in the vicinity of the project. The project site is marked in blue. As you can see, it is located at the transition between medium-density residential and mixed-use neighborhood designations. We believe this project meets the following goals of the mixed-use neighborhood comp plan designation for the following reasons. It provides higher density residential development at 11.2 dwelling units per acre. It provides a transitional use between the existing office and medium-density residential uses that are adjacent to the project. That it provides an additional land use to the neighborhood. That it provides a variety of residential categories. And that urban services can be reasonably provided and development is contiguous to the city. In addition to our rezone request, a preliminary plat application has also been submitted. The pre-plat proposes 16 single-family dwelling units. 8 of those are detached units, and 8 of those are duplex or attached units. Our minimum lot size is 2,009 square feet, and our average lot size is 3,150 square feet. There are 4 common lots in the subdivision. 2 of those are common drives, and 2 of those are landscape common lots. Here's our proposed preliminary plat. The lots in brown at the north and along Bright Angel are the proposed duplex units. Those in yellow are the single-family detached units. Gray are our common drives, and then green is our landscape open space. The site plan proposes 2 common drives for the following reasons. They provide access to 12 total dwelling units, but they also limit drive access to Star Drive. Star Drive is classified as a local street, but it functions as a collector roadway for traffic coming from Raspberry and Havasu Falls subdivisions out to Locust Grove. So limiting drive access to Star was important to both ACHD and city staff. It eliminates the need for internal streets on such a small site, and it also faces the garages away from Star Drive. Setbacks are also oriented to match rear yards together, both within the subdivision and to the neighboring residential uses. In the site plan that we submitted, you can see the garage pads. They face the common drives with the exception of 2 duplex or 4 total units that take direct access from Bright Angel. The landscape plan provides berming and landscaping at Star Drive and Bright Angel as a focal point for entrance into the neighborhood. It also screens homes at the intersection from headlights. As you can see on the landscape plan, we've got some berming at this intersection point. As I mentioned before, the project lies within the existing Raspberry Crossing subdivision, which was platted in 2005. The project will remain part of the existing HOA, which will provide access to already existing open space and pressure irrigation for the residents. And the dues from the new homeowners will go to improve the existing park spaces. This is an aerial view of Raspberry Crossing subdivision. The project site is highlighted in blue, and the neighborhood open spaces are marked with a green dot. Both are located within a quarter mile of the site. The building design for the subdivision utilizes contemporary materials and appealing architectural features. It provides primarily 2-story elevations with stepped roof lines at the garage. The garages are also recessed from the living space and from the street. The plans will focus on efficient floor plans and contemporary finishes, and it will provide an affordable housing option to Meridian residents. This is the elevation for the single-family detached units. It's got a single-story garage with a small storage space above, two-story living space, and the garage is recessed from the living space. This is the elevation for the duplex units on the north boundary of the property. We've got lots of modulation, stone accents, a split roof, eaves on the roof lines, variation in siding materials, and again, that garage is set back from the street. And the final elevation for the unit's long Bright Angel. Footprints within the subdivision will typically range from 1,700 to 2,100 square feet. So in summary, we believe that the rezone request complies with the Meridian Comprehensive Plan, that the preliminary plat complies with R15 zoning designation requirements, that this project provides affordable housing options to Meridian residents and is compatible with neighboring uses. These parcels have been sitting vacant since 2005. We believe the project will provide a pleasing and compatible addition to the neighborhood while providing needed housing and additional tax revenue to the city of Meridian. The applicant is in agreement with all conditions of approval and respectfully requests approval from the commission tonight. I will stand for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Casanelli?
Corinne, I've got a couple questions. Sure. Number one is, you talked about being included in the HOA for Raspberry. Is that in our notes here, it says potentially include, but is that pretty much a done deal?
So the HOA president is here tonight as well, and so he'll speak on behalf of them and their interest in having us. And I believe that these lots are most likely a part of the HOA as is, because they were part of the overall subdivision. I haven't read to see if they were specifically included, but we'll, I guess, kind of clean that up during the final plat process in the CC&Rs.
Okay. The other question I had is you commented one of your bullet points there was that it would create affordable housing. These are not planned on being rental units. These are
they're for sale units.
They're for sale units. I don't know if you can kind of give a ballpark of estimated price at this point in time with the market.
We don't have it keeps going up, and so it just part of it depends on construction costs. I don't have a good.
You don't have is there a target?
Below 300, hopefully closer to maybe the 280 range.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we have anyone signed up to testify?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We do have one, Derek Eisenbeiss.
Sir, please state your name and address for the record.
Oh, yes, ma'am. I think I've dropped my notes. My name is Derek Eisenbeiss. I live at 1329 East Star Drive. I'm also the current HOA president of Raspberry Crossing Subdivision. As HOA president of the association, I would respectfully request more than a 3-minute allotted time, as I am representative on the majority of Raspberry Crossing Subdivision.
Would anyone here who would like to have him represent you raise your hands, please? You know, I think we'll just try to stick to the 3 minutes, and then if she would like to come share, that would be great.
I'll try to read my bullets
Thank you.
as fast as possible. Okay, again, my name is Derek Eisenbeiss. I'm the current HOA president of Raspberry Crossing Subdivision. Ed Bowman has been in contact with me and the subdivision concerning this development starting around November 2017. I feel that the rezoning of the currently LO/R8 to R15 would benefit the community by allowing for more selection of housing opportunities, which would complement Meridian's current vision of creating diverse and premier housing that provide varied lifestyle choices. This type of housing proposed by Mr. Bowman will provide economically competitive choices for those wishing to move to or remain in the city of Meridian, which in turn stands to benefit the city and the community as a whole. I have attended the neighborhood meetings sponsored by Mr. Bowman and have listened to the concerns of those who expressed them. The majority of these residents reside in Alexandria, subdivision, which is next door adjacent to Raspberry Crossing. The main concerns, as I see them, being traffic and parking, safe and sufficient common areas, property and home values. On the topic of traffic, East Star Drive is a common access road to at least 4 separate subdivisions: Havasu Creek, Copper Basin, Heritage Commons, as well as Alexandria. We currently have 2 commercial lots, Ashley Manor, as well as a daycare in our subdivision, part of our subdivision. Those current commercial lots have parking for around 24 vehicles. If you would consider that there would be 2 commercial entities replacing this planned residential, that alone would provide about 48 vehicle spaces, therefore being more than what would be assumed to be part of the residential. Therefore, traffic, I don't see as an issue. Seeing as this main access road services about 400 to 500 residential homes in those 4 subdivisions, the addition of 16 homes is a modest 3 to 4% increase in traffic on the East Star Drive, which would end well before actually the road narrows. Also, the current layout of the proposed development has the residential garages and driveway off-street. This would limit any additional parking on East Star, which should not be a concern. About the common areas, Raspberry Crossing currently has 2 main common areas servicing 32 residential homes. The common areas do not currently have playground equipment or any other sports activity amenities, yet they are used for picnicking, including our annual HOA meeting / barbecue. So there's 3 minutes. That's why I request a little bit longer. I'm about halfway done.
We'll give you 1 more minute.
Thank
Try to
you.
wrap up. Thank you.
So basically, the addition to these homes would add to the Raspberry Crossing financial means to provide more amenities, not only just for Raspberry Crossing, but as well as the planned Raspberry Villas. Speaking on property and home values, in conversation with Mr. Bowman and the HOA board, it was agreed upon that this planned development would be owner-occupied homes and be constructed to complement the neighborhood. It is noted that while Alexandria was established for empty nesters, the subdivision that adjacents Alexandria were not, including Raspberry Crossing, which was established well before Alexandria, and Raspberry Villas will be incorporated into Raspberry Crossing. Having said this, it should be noted that conceptualized elevations of these type of homes proposed most certainly should not decrease values of surrounding homes, specifically those of Alexandria, while, as mentioned before, was built for a different demographic than those of Raspberry Villas.
Thank you, sir. So we understand that you personally are in favor of this development. Can you comment on the HOA's willingness to bring this development in? I understand from the applicant that was something you were going to share with us.
In our last meeting as an HOA, we had voted unanimously to approve this addition to our subdivision.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for him?
Madam Chair?
Yes. Commissioner Seal?
Have you worked out the details of exactly what the improvements will be to the open sites? Or is it just something that you are hoping that the extra money will allow for that?
Sure, it is a discussion in the works. Obviously, we have to have this approved, and then we are going to discuss more options as far as giving more amenities to the neighborhood.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there anyone else here who would like to testify? Okay. Can I get a motion to close the public hearing? Well, does the applicant have anything else to add? Do we have any additional questions for her?
Corinne, can I ask you one quick question?
Please come forward.
So while you're walking up, the one thing I don't quite understand is there's a buffer, that R8 zone that's, so that's not owned by the neighborhood to the west, but it was landscaped like it was a buffer. So is that being maintained in the same setback requirement?
It's not, it's actually being replatted as part of
No,
the
I understand that,
subdivision. Okay.
size-wise, because I think you have houses that are used to having that kind of landscape buffer behind their homes.
Right, and it's, well, I guess they're used to having a larger vacant lot even
Absolutely.
behind that. So if you look at, I don't know if Sonia has an aerial up or not, but they've got quite a bit of lot depth
Yeah.
behind them, and then we've also got a 12-foot, we've lined up all of our rear setbacks to match theirs, so we've got 3-on-3, we've got a 12-foot setback on our side. None of them came to speak at the neighborhood meetings, so I don't think that there's any concerns.
So that one sliver is a 12-foot setback, is that the plan for those homes facing or their rear backyard is heading west?
Their rear yards are heading west, yes.
That's a 12-foot setback?
It is, yep.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Yep, you're welcome.
Can I get a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to close the public hearing for Raspberry Villas H20180130. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
None opposed. Motion carries.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Casanelli.
Question for staff. Sonia, do you know if incorporated into Raspberry Villas, what the overall open space would become? You don't have that figure?
Chairman Perot, Commissioner Casanelli, no, I do not have those calculations.
You happen to have what it is on the existing Raspberry Villas?
No, I don't.
Okay. That would, my concern on this is that incorporating that into the HOA and as part of Raspberry Villas, would it meet the minimums? Obviously, I'd like to see, it doesn't sound like they have very many amenities in Raspberry Villas, so that's, I think it would be hard to condition amenities to be added, but if we, you know, as far as condition to have that open space, as it stands, I guess I'll just comment now, but as it stands in and of itself, there's not a whole lot of open space there, and it doesn't, you know, to me, it's, there's two tiny little pieces of open space, so taking this as a standalone project, I'm not wild about it, and I wouldn't be in favor of changing it from the office. I'm not concerned about traffic. I think it's almost a wash. If you were to look, if this was office, I think you're going to have as much, maybe even a few more cars per day than what's going in here. My only concern is that is the open space in this project. That's why I would be concerned about if we can condition for it meeting. If this adds into Raspberry Village, becomes part of the HOA there, that this entire project would have to meet the minimums, that'd be my biggest concern.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Holland.
Since Commissioner Casanelli didn't talk about it, one of my concerns is actually parking on this. I think each unit has the 2-car garage and has the driveway with it too, but if you have guests over and they're 2,100 square foot houses, roughly 1,700 to 2,100, you may have extra cars coming over for visits, and it's always hard when you've got a couple of common drives because you can't really park as well on the street on those. That would be one of my concerns, I guess.
I wonder if after hours they couldn't use the parking at the daycare or any other of the surrounding commercial.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Fitzgerald.
Sonia, Bright Angels is a local street, right? So we have no problem with having housing fronting onto Bright Angel?
That's correct, Commissioner Fitzgerald.
And they can park along there as well, correct?
As
It's
long
not
as
a
the street
collector.
width allows, I believe it does.
Okay. So I've said this, I'm probably a broken record wise, I see infill as differently than I think others might. This looks to me like a orchards type project or a product. I very much compliment the applicant for matching up lot lines, because I think that's a big deal when you're looking at back doors, matching those lot lines up so we don't have 3 houses on one property to a different side. So I appreciate that. I'm less concerned about the open space, but I understand your concerns. I know where you're going. So I don't have a problem there. I think we need these types of houses. The zero lot line product, I think, is the diversification that we don't have always. and I think they sell pretty well. But I will kind of keep my comments and thoughts until we have a further discussion on which way I'm leaning.
I agree with Commissioner Fitzgerald. I think I think this is a good location for this type of home. It's a good transition to the surrounding area. There's Settlers Park that's just to the south of that as well. So that's a great option for folks for green space. I understand Commissioner Casanelli's thoughts and concerns on that. And in this particular location, because the park is there, I have less concern about the combination of open space with the other sections of Raspberry.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Holland.
I didn't mention some of the good things when I started talking to you. I do like the layout of the buildings because it's a little higher density, but it's not traditional multifamily where you've got a threeplex in someone's backyard. So
yeah.
I like seeing that it's something that looks more like a residential neighborhood that's tied in a little higher density. So I think they've done a good job with the way that they've laid that out. I'm not as concerned about the open space because they're single units that have kind of its own grass area around it, and that there's the park nearby. I'm less concerned with that as well. I like the idea that they're willing to work with the neighborhood association to add some amenities. If we were to make an approval or recommend approval on this application, I'd probably ask that they could define what those amenities would be before it comes to council.
That's a good compromise.
Okay.
I agree.
It's a great suggestion. Any other thoughts and comments?
Overall, I'm for an infill project. It's good. I really want to see that this project, when you look at it as part of Raspberry Villas, that it does. If this were to have been built all at once as part of Raspberry Villas, that it meets the minimum open space requirements. I don't know, it does, because it doesn't sound like from what the HOA president was saying, they don't have the amenities. I don't know that they're. I mean, if they're just at 10% where they're at, you add this as total as total acreage, they're going to be below, and that's my concern. Is that so? I mean, if they have to strip away a lot to meet it, that's where I would stand on this project. I think as a whole, as part of Raspberry Villas, it's got to meet that minimum open space requirements.
Madam Chair, if I may, Commissioner Casanelli, excuse me, I did look that up. Raspberry Crossing provided 12.5% of the gross land area in qualified open space. They did come through as a planned development, and that does require a minimum of 10% qualified open space, so they're at 12.5.
That's as it is right now, not
just
including
Raspberry
this.
Crossing.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if anybody can do quick math and how many acres is? Or?
This project's an acre and a half at 1.4. So they're above this project in itself doesn't require minimum open space and site amenities, but yes, if you add that to the amount, then it would.
If we add it all together, would it as one project, would it meet?
Stay above.
Would we meet the 10%?
Yes.
Okay. That's my hang up.
And
not as
Madam
much
Chair,
parking this time. I don't know why. I guess
Just had to
because
throw it in there.
I'm glad you did. I wasn't thinking about it, but that's that one street. What's that side? What's that
Bright
other side
Angel.
street? Bright Angel. I think that can handle some overflow.
Yeah.
This may be more geared towards it. Maybe empty nesters too in this project with the zero lot lines. I don't think big families are going to move. Are going to be looking for this when there's not the space for the kids. So
Potentially not with the two-story element.
That's true.
True.
In general, I'm not a fan of common drives, but the width on these is better than we often see with the common drives, and I think in this situation it actually works with trying to keep the parking off of Star Drive. So, and I think in this scenario it it works well. I'm very, I think that you've done a great job making this an original and good use of space and design.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Fitzgerald.
Sonia, I know we were suggesting, or in your staff report, that this has a DA as we roll into a different, if we go that direction, which I would fully agree with, and that the elevations go with it. Is that your suggestion, my understanding?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Is there not additional comments? I will make a motion, Madam Chair.
Please do.
Anybody else?
All yours.
Madam Chair, after
Fitzgerald.
considering all staff, applicant, and public testimony, I move to recommend approval to the City Council of file number H2018-0130 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of February 7th, 2019. Do you want to have them have amenity conceptual before they go to council? I don't have a problem with that.
I think it'd be nice if they could come up with some, at least suggested conversations that they've had of what they could put forward. Didn't frame that well, but.
With following modifications, that the applicant has conceptual amenities that you'd be adding to Raspberry subdivision before council.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to recommend approval to City Council of rezone and preliminary plat for H20180130. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
None opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
We good to move forward? Does anybody need a break? Okay. Next, we'll open the public hearing for Hill Century Farm Wireless Communications Facility H20180087 and begin with the staff report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. The next application is a conditional use permit. This site is part of a larger 39.71 acre property. It's zoned R8 and is located off the southeast corner of South Eagle Road and East Amity Road. There is a Idaho Power substation directly north of this site at the corner of Eagle and Amity. The surrounding area has been conceptually approved for single-family residential uses. As you can see there on the concept plan there at the upper left-hand corner, that is included in the development agreement for this site. A single-family residence exists at the southeast corner of this property that is proposed to remain. This site was annexed with R8 zoning, and single-family residential uses were approved to develop on this site originally. The development agreement, like I said, was recently amended to allow the development of a wireless communication facility on this site. The comprehensive plan future land use map designation is mixed-use neighborhood. The applicant is requesting approval of a conditional use permit for a stealth wireless communication facility in the R8 zoning district. A site plan was submitted with this application as shown that depicts how the northwest corner of this site is proposed to develop with a 20-foot by 70-foot, 1,400 square foot fenced lease area with a 100-foot tall monopine cell tower and associated equipment for Verizon Wireless. The tower will be co-locatable for a total of up to 4 carriers and will support panel antennas. Ground-mounted equipment will be located within the fenced enclosure. The proposed facility will add to Verizon's existing network and provide improved services to customers and improved calling and data capacity, improving overall system performance in this area. Maintenance visits only occur about once a month, therefore traffic to this site will be minimal. The applicant submitted a vicinity map showing locations of existing towers. There are 5 within 2.3 miles of the site, with the nearest being 1 mile away. That map is there on your left. Propagation maps are shown on the right. They were submitted showing the current coverage area, and that's on top there, with the coverage area after the proposed tower is constructed on the bottom. There are several specific use standards that are applicable to the proposed use that are detailed in the staff report, one of which is the new towers may not be approved unless the decision-making body finds the telecommunications equipment planned for the proposed tower cannot be accommodated on an existing or approved structure and/or tower at a height necessary to function reasonably as documented by a qualified radio frequency engineer. The applicant's network engineer submitted a letter stating that the existing towers in the area do not meet all requirements in regard to height and/or location to function reasonably to address their coverage gap in this area. Because this site abuts a future residential area, the facility is required to be set back a distance equal to the height of the tower, in this case 100 feet. Therefore, staff recommends the subject site area is expanded to the west, east, and south, a minimum of 100 feet from the location of the tower to accommodate the required setback. If the land use of the adjacent area changes to a non-residential use in the future, the site area could be reduced per the setbacks of the zoning district. A landscape buffer at least 5 feet in width is required along the outside perimeter of the compound. The applicant did request alternative compliance to this requirement due to a storage facility being planned surrounding the project site. This request was denied by the director because a storage facility has not been approved in the surrounding area. Residential uses are currently approved surrounding the site, necessitating the provision of a buffer. If at some point in the future the adjacent land use changes to a non-residential use, a subsequent request for alternative compliance may be approved, but not at this time. Written testimony has been received from several folks. I'll go through those real quick. Caleb and Mary Bennett, Laddie and Andrea Tlusik, Susan Carnes, Dean Kidd, Robin Williman, Helen and Kent Timsland. They all object to the proposed tower. Some of the reasons are due to the close proximity of other cell towers within a mile of the site, too close to nearby residences and risk for families to develop health issues, and close proximity of a public school. David Palumbo submitted testimony. He feels that the city is in violation of state code in regard to noticing, feels a larger area should have been noticed due to the impact of the proposed use on residents beyond the 300-foot radius notice. Staff is recommending approval as the proposed use complies with UDC standards.
Thank you. Any questions for staff?
I do have one, yes.
Mr. Olson?
What's our response to the noticing question?
Madam Chair, I'll let our city attorney address that.
Actually, this is the first time I'm learning of this issue. I'm not sure if the individual is here and could provide a reference. Okay. So we can get to that during the public testimony.
Thank you.
Madam City Attorney, the letter is in the public records if you'd like to reference it.
Okay, would the applicant please come forward? Please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, ma'am. Madam Chairman, Commissioners, my name is Zach Williams, address 408 South Eagle Road, Eagle, Idaho 83616. I'm here for you today on behalf of Powder River and Horizon Tower. We're looking to do a cell tower. As staff stated, it's a 20 by 70 compound. Per staff's comments on the landscape buffer, as well as being, as the proposed is by residential use. We've changed our fence to not be a chain link fence, but to be a vinyl fence to block out equipment, as well as agreeing to placing the 5-foot landscape buffer around the outside of the compound. Since it's not planned and not approved, we felt like, it's needed as to be cohabitive in the area. We are proposing a 100-foot monopine tower. This is simply due to the fact that we want to have as many co-locators as possible. We don't want multiple towers throughout the area. We want to try to get as many co-locators or carriers on the tower as possible. So with a 100-foot tower, we're doing a monopine design. With a residential use in the future, we felt like it would be the best design with future trees and future landscaping that tends to be put in residential areas, can help blend in with those areas over time. Currently, right now, Verizon and AT&T are wanting to go on this tower. The propagation map shown here is Verizon's propagation. You can see how there's a coverage hole right in the center. Verizon's actually located on both of the towers closest to this site already. So that's kind of why those two sites wouldn't work as far as co-locating. They're already on them. They needed this additional tower to help fill the gap in coverage that you can see inhabits everything southwest of the site. And all the homes and development that's being done out there, it's going crazy. So they're trying to keep up with that and make sure that they maintain their coverage. AT&T had the same issues with the other two areas based off where the new homes are being developed and where they have a gap in coverage. They felt that this site would provide the most adequate height for them to co-locate on. They will be the top rad center, and then Verizon will be below them at 85 feet. Oh man. Horizon, and just recommend that you follow staff's recommendation of approval. We have met all the requirements of the code, and in regards to the residential setbacks of 100 feet, agree to meet that as well, working with Brighton as they are the developers of the future property. And stand for questions.
Any questions for the applicant?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Casanelli?
do you happen to have a current picture of one of these, the pine tower, whatever? It's Stell. Because I know I've seen some of them around, and it's a matter of, a couple branches right at the very top. Is this a little bit fuller than?
Yes, sir. Typically Horizon Tower, and I know there's all kinds of different kinds. Usually there's towers like the one behind Lowe's, that's one branch for every foot in height.
That's the one I'm thinking of, off Eagle Road there, yeah.
Yeah, and then you have the one at the Eagle Hills Golf Course that's really tall, that's 2 branches for every foot in height. Horizon Tower, actually, they're a Northern California company, so they do a lot of, obviously, pine towers up in Northern California. They prefer to do 3 branches for every foot in height as far as the spacing, so that way it does look a lot fuller. They propose that for all of their cell towers locally and in Northern California, the 3 branches, to make it aesthetically pleasing.
Do you have an image of one of those?
Not handy. It's a new directive, just simply because they've had so many requests for that as far as having more fuller trees. We haven't had any of them built yet.
Does it come down further? Will the branches come down further than?
So per the code, the branches are only allowed to be, we have to leave the bottom 20 feet of the tower clear. That way nobody can climb the tower, obviously. We have to leave it clear of pegs and that kind of stuff. With a 100-foot tower, they typically like to start the branches at about 30 feet. That way, it's the top 70 feet of the tower that has the branches instead of a whole 100 feet. When you start to have it going 80 feet, you pose into wind loadings and those kind of things that really limit how much structural capacity you can have with multiple carriers.
Okay, but it's not the top 15 feet.
No, it would be, 30 feet up, from 30 feet all the way to the top.
Okay, and then as the second question, that propagation map. Just curious in terms of where the existing towers are at on that map.
Yeah. So
is it a matter of the number of users in that area? It's not a matter of the distance that the signal will go.
It's a little of both. So it is the amount of users, since there is a uptick in the amount of users and homes being built there. The capacity in that area is diminishing, and the distance as well does have a factor into how it can propagate to those areas. That's why you can see the little black dots in the center of the green. I don't know if you can see that part, but the little black dots in the center are actually where those proposed towers are. They're kind of hard to see. Over a mile away in this whole center area, with the Eagle Road intersection, I know that north piece is owned by Albertsons. Not sure what they're developing there, but this whole intersection, this whole area with Brighton is being developed really fast. YMCA going in and that kind of stuff. So the capacity is the major issue here. Sorry, I wasn't talking to the microphone. Is the major issue here, but it does affect coverage too with having all the new users in there.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Holland?
Do you have anything that you could say to the concern about the public health issues?
All I have is per the Telecommunications Act of 1996, cell towers are not allowed to be denied for health reasons. It's a federal mandate by the FCC. That's really the comment. There's studies 2 and 4, you see them everywhere, all opinion-based, but the FCC has ruled per the Telecommunications Act of 1996 that no decision, local or judicial courts, can be made based off health effects of cell towers.
So I understand that the applicant is in agreement and compliance with staff's request for the 100-foot on the east west and south, correct? And also with a landscape buffer, you said?
Yes, ma'am.
What is the plan for irrigation to that, to water the landscaping?
That will be worked out with Brighton and their development. We will provide irrigation, make sure that obviously all our landscaping doesn't die. That's
Okay.
kind of a big thing. But we'll be working with Brighton as we have a lease with them, so we'll go
Okay.
over the whole outside of the compound and what kind of shrubs and trees, and I get staff's approval on that because I have to go through a design
The
review.
design
and
review.
Yep, and a CZC before this will be formally approved for building permits.
Okay. Any additional questions for the applicant? Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Is there anyone signed up to testify?
Yes, Madam Chair, but before we get to that, I would like to respond to the Commission's question about the noticing, if I may. So my office is responsible for executing noticing for public hearings. I think Mr. Palumbo referenced 300 feet. Because of this type of application, it's required that 1,000 feet is the radius notice requirement, which our office executed. When this was first in front of the Commission in 2018, August, I think, we executed that notice. We executed an additional notice when this was scheduled to come back before the Commission. We asked the Planning Department to rerun the list to make sure that the list was accurate and up to date, because in those 4 months there could have been change in property ownership. So we did do that. In addition, we put it out on Nextdoor, as we do with all of our other public hearing notices. So as far as the city code goes, we executed it effectively and accordingly. His reference to state code, I don't know if Ms. Polk has any comment there, but as far as city code goes, we did follow what is required in terms of public noticing.
And I would follow up with the clerk that pursuant to the UDC 11-5A-6, Section E, which is the mailing and publishing of the public hearing notice, the clerk is correct that the 1,000 feet radius was proper and appropriate as required by the UDC. And as the city clerk just advised the commission, that was followed out and occurred.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very good. We do have a sign up. Susan Carnes has signed up this evening.
Please come forward. She's still present.
I don't believe she's here tonight.
Madam Chair, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Sonia, we keep saying setback. Are we having a fall circumference too? Is that what the setback is?
Yes,
Just so we're,
essentially, yes.
It's a fall ratio. And that, and when you're looking at Century Farms, we're not close to their backyards in that section right there? I mean, that seems, 100 feet seems like a lot of tower to come down and not touch a house that's in Century Farms. If we have a plat or overlay.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Fitzgerald, there are no homes in this area right here. The only home on this parcel is located right here at the southeast corner of this parcel.
Currently.
But these are all designated and conceptually approved for single-family residential. That's why staff recommended that they expand the site, just to ensure that residential uses wouldn't be built up to that property line.
That makes sense. Okay.
Madam Chair, if I could just clarify my earlier statement, I
Please do.
misspoke when I said 300 feet. And anyway, he's clarified the record that 1,000 feet was required, but I just wanted to clarify my statement as well.
Thank you very much.
You.
And also, Madam Chair, Sally Reynolds signed up as well.
Excellent. Thank you. Please come forward.
Good evening. My name is Sally Reynolds. My address is 1166 West Bacall Street in Meridian, Idaho. And I am, actually, Susan Carnes was not able to be here, so I am standing in for her in her behalf this evening and representing the Meridian Southern Rim Coalition. So it has several hundred members, and therefore I respectfully request 10 minutes for testimony.
Excuse me. I think all of the commissioners are familiar with the Meridian Southern Rim Coalition. Are we in agreement with the 10 minutes? Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And Bill, do you have my PowerPoint? Awesome. Thank you. So firstly, as you are aware from our previous appearances before this commission, the coalition objects to any substantial changes to land use in the city while we are in the process of creating a new comprehensive plan. Our members strongly believe that the city should strictly adhere to its comp plan, flume, and the intent that it's asking us as stakeholders to participate in this very important process. For that reason alone, we oppose this conditional use permit due to the substantial deviation from normal land use in a residential district. The City of Meridian is very clear in its language about cell towers near residential communities. Encourage the location of wireless communication facilities in non-residential districts and/or where non-residential uses are allowed. It also says protect existing residential uses. Cell towers are not allowed without a conditional use permit and for good reasons. This is the proposed site. As you can see, it is clearly a residential area. In good faith, the Century Farms residents and nearby neighborhoods purchased their homes with the understanding that this land would be an R8, and as you've heard staff say, it still is, or medium-density residential community. The City of Meridian is also very clear in its language regarding aesthetics. Encourage construction of stealth communication towers which are compatible with their surroundings and do not detract from the overall visual quality of the city. This is a photo of a cell phone tower 1 mile away at Amity and Locust Grove. Note the stand of mature trees that effectively screen the tower, and note the location just 1 mile from this site. Our members strongly object to the close proximity of another tower in this area. The City of Meridian also strives to, quote, minimize the adverse visual effects of communication towers and other similar structures through thoughtful, careful design standards. This proposed site, with the exception of the heavily screened substation, is flat, raw land. A 100-foot pine tree will create a distraction and detract from the overall visual quality of the area. We applaud the director for requiring landscaping and appropriate fencing, but that's not enough justification for placing a cell tower in a residentially zoned district. When residents purchased homes in this area, the substation at Amity and Eagle was in place, and as you can see, well shielded through berms and foliage. It is disrespectful to residents of Century Farm to allow a cell tower in a residential district adjoining their homes, especially when there are alternative locations like nearby undeveloped commercial parcels owned by the developer. Our residents are concerned about their property values. The detrimental impact of cell towers on property values is well documented. Peer review studies find that values decline by 20% near cell towers. And here's just one. Homebuyers in a survey indicated they would pay from 10% to 19% less to more than 20% less for a property in close proximity to a cell phone base station. And the results were then confirmed by a market sales analysis. Prices of properties were reduced to around 21% after a cell phone base station was built in the neighborhood. So our members have expressed additional concerns. Before allowing a 100-foot cell tower 1 mile from an already existing one, especially in a residential district, we believe that the city should require the opinion of an independent expert, not the applicant's network engineer, regarding the need for a tower here and not in a nearby commercial district. So this was run in the news just 2 days ago. The Idaho Statesman carried a cover story about a new cell technology, accompanied by a photo of a wireless transmitter attached unobtrusively to the top of a light pole in downtown Boise. So why not use this technology in our neighborhoods? Place this 100-foot cell tower where it belongs in a commercial or an industrial district and utilize this new discrete technology in our neighborhoods. In closing, we believe that there is no compelling reason to approve this conditional use permit. Instead, there are numerous reasons to deny this CUP, which would set a terrible precedent for cell towers in residential districts in our cities. or to further the study of options that would provide cell service while respecting our residents and neighborhoods. Please respect our residents who are opposed to this site for a cell tower. Let's adhere to the UDC that encourages the location of wireless communication facilities in non-residential districts. Thank you, and I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions?
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Casanelli?
Is Century Farms, is that considered part of the Southern Rim District?
You know, to be honest, I'm not, I believe it is. I believe so. I'm not the head of that. Susan does chair that, but I would assume it is.
Staff, do you know what the northern boundary is on that? Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Well, you're saying the geographical boundaries?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that I'm not sure, but they do participate in the Southern Rims Coalition as far as communications and getting surveys from the coalition and notifications of different properties and hearings that are coming up. So.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Is there anyone else here who would like to testify? Please come forward.
Madam Chair, while she's coming up, Sonia, we have significant Idaho power lines that run down Amity Road. Do we have any idea how tall those are? Is it just with that substation? I mean, there's a significant amount of tall power lines that go along that road. So I'm just.
Madam Chair, no, I don't.
Okay.
On that note, I do have one more question for staff while she's preparing. Do we know what the distance is from this property to the boundary line, the north boundary of Century Farm? Across the open space?
To the south, Madam Chair, quarter mile.
Quarter mile.
Just a little under.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Hall.
Quick Google search says that they can typically be between 60 and 120 feet on major roadways. Power poles.
Okay. Please state your name and address for the record.
Denise Lefevre, 6706 North Salvia Way, Meridian, Idaho. First of all, let's just put aside the fact that it was Hill and Brighton that are coming forward with the application in the first place. But I do object to the fact that this application, for a cell tower to be in this residential area, it says right in there, it's either prohibited or a conditional use. So it required two things to come forward. One is a development agreement change and a conditional use change. Okay. When City Council approved the development agreement, it was conditional that you guys approve the CUP. So therefore, the development agreement doesn't mean anything because it still requires a CUP. But the fact that they were decoupled, I have an issue with. This should have been put together and brought forward as one package. Putting that aside, it's still in a zoned R8 area, and 11-4-3-43, as already discussed, discourages placement of a wireless tower in a residential area. In addition, there are lots of other techniques that are available that are coming out with the 5G that just broke in the news that are far more aesthetic to the area. Putting it on top of a light pole or a telephone pole, far more appealing. In addition, the property right next door, based on Sonia's information that she brought forward, right to the east, Brighton and Alquest plan on doing a rezone and making that commercial, which, if it has to go anywhere, putting it over on the commercial plot of the land would make sense because then it's not an issue. Barring all of that, that one cell picture that came up, there are a lot of better ways and a lot nicer looks over a tree. There's artwork and other disguises that's far more attractive that could go up. And if you have that, did it come down? It locked? Oh, my phone locked. We'll show you a picture of some other disguises that are far more attractive. And if for some reason you decide that it goes on the corner, I would strongly suggest that we look at other alternatives besides a tree. I mean, that actually looks nice. And there's several other art pieces that are out there for disguises that they have access to. And there's lots of other areas throughout different cities that do require them to disguise their towers, and they're not all trees. So I will close and say I'd like to see you deny the cup. That developer has the opportunity to locate it during the rezone process right to the east. If not, I would like you to consider putting a much nicer disguise on that. So.
Is there anybody else in the audience interested in testifying? Okay.
Madam Chair, if I may make one comment.
Yes.
I would like to apprise the commission. Susan Carnes did send in written testimony late yesterday evening that I just actually added to the public testimony folder if the commission is interested in looking at her written testimony that she submitted since she wasn't able to be here this evening.
Thank you very much.
If I may just clarify the record, cell towers are either a principal permitted or a conditional use in all zoning districts in the city. They are not prohibited, so just to clarify that.
Thank you.
Depending on the specific use standards, whether they're conditional or not.
Okay. Appreciate that. Okay, would the applicant like to come forward?
Madam Chairman, Commissioners, just want to touch on a few topics. Sonia did it perfectly with talking about how it's a permitted use or a conditional use permit. It's not prohibited. As long as we meet the standards of the code, which we have done on this application for a conditional use permit. If I would have done a shorter tower, that would have been, and the residential would have already been in place, I could have actually done it permitted. But based off my proposed application, it falls under a conditional use permit. Just based off the needs of the carriers and the heights they needed in order to get adequate coverage in the area. And talks about this being an R8 lot. It is an R8 lot currently with what Brighton has. You can see how they kind of carved out our cell tower on their DA modification there. They are still working on what they want to do with the rest of the property. They are when we originally were working on this, they were talking of doing a storage facility. And that's why we've had proposed a chain link fence and no landscape buffer around it. That has since changed, well, not totally changed. As of right now, it's changed based off the development agreement. In the future, it may change to where we can take that away, as Sonia stated earlier. So based off the way it's currently done, meeting all the setbacks and meeting all that stuff with the landscape, we're more than willing to do. And it follows the residential code. We've met everything required by the city of Meridian, by the local jurisdiction in order to have the facility located here. There are alternative tower types, but it makes it more noticeable. As we're talking about galvanized poles, light, the electrical lines, I mean, those towers are between 90 to 120 feet. I worked on those in the past. And as they mentioned with small cells, I actually working on a lot of the small cells in the city of Boise, and they are a great design, so thank you, appreciate that. But the small cells do not work unless they have a macro facility. Basically what the small cell is it's an amplifier to help offload capacity. We're doing them generally right now in the downtown areas just because there's so much capacity, business, traffic down there that the macro sites actually need additional help at the street level. Those are typically range from 25 to 40 feet in height. But out in this area, where it's actually a coverage and capacity need, the small cell, it wouldn't work for what the needs are of the carriers. And that's all I have.
Madam Chair.
Any questions for the applicant?
A couple of questions for you.
Yeah.
In installing these poles in other locations that you've done, what's the longevity of the poles? Do they need to have replacements over time? Do they need a lot of maintenance on them?
Depends on how well you do it. How will you build anything? Typically, it's every 5 years they get all the branches kind of updated and redone just to make sure that nothing's falling off. They check the whole tower. They do a tower climb, kind of an inspection thing on the branches, because the last thing we want is them falling down. But you also have tower crews that'll be going up there when they do co-locations and that kind of stuff, that when they're up there, they'll be installing branches as needed, or if stuff falls off, replacing them as needed as well. Since they're installing on the tower, they'll need to do that. They'll also be installing like antenna socks, which will help camouflage the antennas to where you won't be seeing just white antennas on this tower. They'll be screened, as well as the radios and stuff behind. They just put a little sock over it to help camouflage it within the existing tree.
Are you able to share with us any other locations that the applicant may have considered and why they were eliminated?
Yeah, I contacted the property directly east. A very nice lady I met with over there. She was looking to do west, sorry. I said east and the RUT. She was not interested simply because she owns quite a bit of property there and wants to sell to a developer and have a subdivision or something like that. She's waiting for them to write her a check with as many zeros as she wants. That's what she told me. So I couldn't argue with her there. It's her property. We also talked about going on the northwest corner, but they have a lot of commercial stuff planned there and didn't have a adequate spot that they were willing to give up or lease to us. Part of our whole looking is we have to find a site that's leasable, zonable, and buildable. We also went across the street to where there's actually a elderly community. I forget the exact name of it, but they had some open space there as well. But we just, from a design standpoint, we didn't like the design, didn't think it would be beneficial for the area. You know, I tried going to the YMCA and those areas down there, but they didn't want it there. Simple fact, they didn't want it anywhere near the school, in which that's one of the West Ada County School District's requirements, is they don't require it on or allow them on elementary schools or middle schools, only high schools. And since we don't have any high schools in this area, there's really no other area for us to go.
And if you locate the tower farther south, north, east, west, it doesn't accomplish what you're attempting to accomplish?
Correct. It doesn't meet the coverage objective.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can I get a motion to close the public hearing for H20180087?
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to close the public hearing for Hill Century Farm Wireless Communications Facility, H20180087. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
None opposed? Motion carries. Would like to start us off, Commissioner Holland?
Cell towers are always interesting because no one ever really wants them anywhere because they're tall and they're noticeable. They do service the need of most communities as technology continues to increase. Just because I'm a visual person, I need to understand what the height looks like. An average two-story house is around 20 to 25 feet tall. So this is about 4 times the height of an average two-story house, if that puts it in perspective. The one good thing about this location is that it's located behind the Idaho Power substation. So if you're going to put it somewhere where there's already infrastructure, I see that being maybe a benefit to tie it in with that, because it's something that they've already planted some trees around. So that helps mask some of that. It's still going to be a tall structure, and I appreciate that they've shared they're working with someone who likes to add more branches to the top to try and blend it a little bit nicer. I'm still conflicted because it's a cell tower and there's obviously lots of concerns and positives on both sides of it. So that's where I'll start.
Okay.
Go, where you want to go?
I'll jump in. I was interested. I had to look at something to confirm it, but you mentioned that West Ada, the applicant, I should say, talking with my fellow commissioners, mentioned that the West Ada doesn't want them at middle schools, yet there's one at Sawtooth, or at Sawtooth Middle. So that I don't understand that one. And I do. Nobody wants them, but everybody wants them. I think it is that catch-22 with it. With that substation there, I think nothing's uglier than a substation. Agreed. Personally, I don't care what you put around it, and from a health standard, the voltage coming off of a substation is tremendous. I don't know if they could if it could be put in the substation in closer, or if Idaho Power won't even discuss that, or if there's too much interference there. I guess my thought is I would lean towards the cell tower. As far as a property value issue, those homes aren't in there yet. So if it would be, I think it would be a different topic if the homes were there and they were looking to locate one, but the tower would potentially go in there first. So any homes around there, you're gonna be buying or not buying, knowing that there's that tower right there. So those are my thoughts on it. I think I would probably tend to. It's necessary. Just like those 120 foot or whatever they are, transmission lines are going up and down Amity, and that substation. Those aren't pretty, but they're necessary. And a cell tower is not necessarily pretty, but it's necessary. And everybody in that surrounding neighborhood, if they don't have cell coverage, they're not going to be happy. I mean, everybody wants it.
Madam Chair, go ahead.
Commissioner, well, I was going to say on that note, Brighton is not only a developer, but they're a home builder as well, and I'm sure they've taken into account the effect it'll have on their bottom line when they do put residential in there, and if it was significant enough for them, if they were that concerned about their values, they would not have agreed to lease that property to a cell tower. So I agree with you in the sense that the homes are not there yet, that the public will be aware that there's a cell tower in that area, and if they choose not to purchase there for that reason, at least they'll have that knowledge. They'll be aware of it.
I think I echo your exact comments, because I think both on the west side, where you have a substantial chunk of property, and Turnbull owns, or the Brighton Corporation owns the property that is around it.
Right.
If we were talking about a cell tower right there with houses there, I would be opposed. I think I'm with Commissioner Castanelli. I think the substation makes it the right place to put it. And those, I mean, looking at I just brought up Google Maps just to look at the visual landscape down Amity Road, and those towers are long and they're all along the road, and it's not going to change. It would add one more component to what's already there. And I think we can't shut down the city's useful structure just because we're in the middle of a comp plan. I mean, I'm sorry, that doesn't work for me. We have to continue to move forward in certain ways. I understand where we're coming and making good decisions, but we have to be able to function as a city as we're going through that process as well. So to a couple points that were said in testimony, that we have to make good decisions to be able to make sure we're offering proper services to our citizens. And it sounds like this is where it needs to be. So,
Madam Chairman, so do I have the picture right? The cell tower is leasing land from the developer that owns the land?
That's correct. Okay. That's my understanding.
Okay.
That's my understanding as well.
Thank you.
And I do have, I understand why residents have concerns. That I echo Commissioner Holland in that regard. I understand that being in the real estate industry, I do have those conversations with real estate clients in that regard, and there is an awareness of it. However, in this situation, it's not a scenario where they would not be aware that the tower's there and make that choice. And again, I have no doubt that Brighton has analyzed that as part of their decision to lease that property. So, are there any other thoughts, comments?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner
I would
Holland?
just note for the commission that because they're requesting conditional use permit, we are the deciding body on this
That is correct.
application, so it won't go forward to council. But one other note I have is I agree with the staff report that they should have the additional buffer.
Yes.
Agreed.
And it's my understanding the applicant is in agreement with that. It doesn't sound like there was anything about the staff report that they were interested in modifying.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Steele.
One thing I'd like to add is, I mean, as new generations move in, I mean, almost the opposite is being seen sometimes, where somebody can see a cell tower, they're thinking, hey, I've got good connectivity here. So as somebody that's not in that generation, and I've had a cell phone tower in my backyard, moved out of that neighborhood, I don't fit that demographic. However, I do know that that's something that, as we attract younger buyers into our communities, that's something that they are actually looking for.
And this is not necessarily in our purview, but something to consider that several homes are now moving towards cell service for their web access. And that's probably affecting capacity in a big, big way. And people are streaming using their cell service, and I would imagine that that's creating a significant demand for towers. So,
We all want it, nobody wants it in their backyard.
That's right. Are we at a point of making a motion?
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Seal.
Are we going to make, I mean, is part of this going to be conditional on what kind of landscaping is approved? Are they going to have to basically provide detailed, some details on that and how that will be maintained?
Right, so that will be reviewed by the staff as part of the zoning compliance process. So those specifics the staff will review and make sure that the applicant's in compliance with that. It's a great question. And as Commissioner Holland mentioned, just so that you're aware, on conditional use permits, we are the final decision makers, so this does not move on to City Council.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Castello.
One additional question for staff. Is Brighton still moving forward with the storage unit on that or not?
Chairman, Commissioner Castanelli, I'm not sure what Brighton is doing. They were looking at that site for a storage facility, but I'm unsure if they're going to go forward with that for sure.
So there's still a possibility of a storage facility.
There is,
right,
however, it's not allowed in the current zone.
Oh, okay.
They would have to go through some additional approvals to make that happen, as well as possibly a comp plan map amendment.
Thank you.
Done? Okay.
Fitzgerald.
Make me do it. I see how you are. After considering all staff, applicant, and public testimony, I move to approve file number H2018-0087 as presented in the staff report for hearing date of February 7th, 2019.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve Hills Century Farm Wireless Communications Facility H2018-0087 conditional use permit. All those in favor say aye.
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 None opposed. Okay, motion carries. Thank you all in the audience for hanging in there. We have one more application. Public hearing for Excalibur Metal Design H2018-0139. We'll start with the staff report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. The last item before you this evening is for conditional use permit. I don't know why that keeps going in and out like that. The site consists of 0.83 acres of land. It's zoned CG, and it's located at 1322 East Water Tower. To the north is a machining supply company zoned IL. To the south is East Water Tower Street and the Meridian Police Department, which is zoned CG. To the east, it's South Adkins Way and an equipment supplier here, which is also zone CG. And to the west is a computer recycling company, which is zone CG. The property was annexed in 2000 and it was rezoned from R8 to CG in 2002. CUP is being requested to construct an approximately 11,000 square foot, two-story light industrial facility to be used for metal design company. The facility is proposed to include a showroom and production areas where customers will be able to view the fabrication process and custom order wholesale or retail products. It'll also contain employee offices and warehouse space. The proposed building will house a service bay intended to contain the majority of fabrication processes to mitigate sound and any industrial characteristics of the intended use. And that is going to be kind of in this area. Access is proposed via East Water Tower Street and South Adkins Way. Typically, staff tries to limit the number of access points from collector roadways. In this case, we're actually kind of allowing them to just keep the 2 access points because there's a outdoor storage use that'll abut the industrial property to the north. And there's also there's also a storage yard that they're proposing in the northern part of the site. So that would limit their ability to be able to do those things and change the site design. There are 22 parking spaces proposed, which is in compliance with UDC standards. A secure parking area is also proposed along the northern part of the site. The gates will be kind of located right here. Access to these parts, or this part of the parking lot, should be coordinated with the Meridian Fire Department and Republic Services. A walkway is proposed to connect the front entrance with the outdoor patio area, which connects to a sidewalk along East Water Tower and South Adkins Way. Right here. The applicant has applied for alternative compliance to allow for trees and grates, which were these 3 right here, and pavers along the southern part of the site abutting East Water Tower Street. Staff is approving the alternative compliance request as the proposal will create a pedestrian-oriented space for customers, employees, and pedestrians. Staff does recommend that the applicant provide greater detail regarding the seating options and space with the CZC and design review application. Conceptual elevations have been submitted for the building. Building materials consist of glass storefront and metal awnings on the south, and metal siding, a perforated metal accent screen, and steel entry on the north, east, and west. Staff is recommending that the north, east, and west elevations be revised to include 2 distinct field materials in compliance with the Architectural Standards Manual for commercial districts. The future structure is also required to comply with the ESM and the UDC. So elevations will be reviewed with the CZC and design review application by staff. With that, I conclude my presentation and I will stand for any questions.
Any questions for staff? Stephanie, can you go over the parking space issue again? Is the applicant proposing to fence the entire property or just that north section of the?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, they are proposing secured parking with a gate that is proposed here and here. So it's going to be, I think, roughly 7 spaces. There's a parking space here, trash enclosures there, and then I think there are 5 or 6 spaces there. So I believe that's intended to be employee parking.
And the staff is recommending that they talk to the fire department and make sure there's correct access for both.
Madam Chair, yes, we're recommending that they just coordinate however far that needs to be from specifically South Adkins Way, just to make sure they have enough room to get in and out if they're sitting there trying to get it unlocked or access the area.
Okay.
And also with Republic Services to make sure that they can get in to get the trash.
Okay. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear. Any other questions for staff? The applicant, please come forward. Please state your name and address for the record.
Jeff Hatch with Hatch Design Architecture, 6126 West State Street, Boise, Idaho. Representing Excalibur Metal Designs. Good evening, Commission Chair Peralt and fellow commissioners. Thank you for your time this evening in consideration of our conditional use application. For almost a decade, Excalibur Metal Designs has been operating in Meridian. They've been serving Meridian and growing their business here in Meridian. And with that success, this application is a continuation of the success of their business. The intended use is to have a showroom that enhances and helps sell their products. And so they not only do metal stair railings and metal fences, but they also do artwork. They do custom furniture. They do a range of very unique, distinct architectural features to buildings, both internally and externally. And so with that, it's really hard to describe in images how and what their capabilities are, because it's very diverse. And so with that, this showroom is intended to help engage the general public and help show them what they have done and what they can do. And in addition, we'll have a fabrication area, and so part of that, we'll have a viewing mezzanine where you can actually go up and see the employees working on these. They all have CNC machines and welding going, and so you can actually use it as an educational piece where we can have the public come in and actually learn about welding and learning about artwork and how you can engage the public more with this type of business. In addition, during our neighborhood meeting, let's see, does this move forward? It does, okay. During our neighborhood meeting, we received some positive support, and we also have one of our adjacent neighbors here in support of the project. And so in addition to the conditional use, we also have our alternative compliance. And so with that, we feel that we achieve that by, on the eastern side of the property, we're actually enhancing the density of the trees that we have along there and tying those in with the architectural language of the building on that east face side. So we're creating more of an aesthetic appeal, but also adding density to the landscaping. On the south, we are proposing to do the south entry in more of an urban street frontage. And so with that, it'll be pavers instead of sidewalk and landscaping. And so in lieu of that, we're gonna have a series of tree grates so that we can still shade that south-facing side. But ultimately, we feel that this approach is gonna be more engaging to the public, which is what our intent is. And it's also gonna be more friendly. We want something that engages the neighborhood and says, come in, come see what we do. And so that's what we feel like we're achieving. In general, we're in agreement with the conditions of approval for this project, but we did want to elaborate a little bit on item G, which is what Stephanie had mentioned slightly, which is about the aesthetics of the exterior of the building. So to the direct north of us, we have a tilt-up concrete building that has two painted colors, one in cream and one in like a maroon color, but the same concrete material and glazing. To the east of us, we have a concrete masonry building that has kind of a split face texture. And then also to the east of us, we have a building that has a little bit of different characteristics of masonry, but it's all still one material masonry. It's just different textures of that product. And then also to the east of us, we have a masonry building that has a slight offset or jog in their facade to create kind of a column or pilaster effect, but again, still all the same material. And so with that, we're showing in our conceptual renderings some of the features of this building. To the south, we're proposing basically an entire glazed southern facade to create a dramatic effect that really engages the public, but also showcases a lot of the transparency of the space and showcases their work. Also with that, on the Adkins side, the intent is to have an undulation in our metal facade so that we're creating something that creates shadows and really engages that elevation. So as a concept of these, to the south, if you look at the top left, that's essentially the type of glazing that we're looking at doing for this facility. Along the eastern side, on the top right, you know, that's all done in metal, but you get a lot of distinction, a lot of characteristics, a lot of uniqueness that we feel enhances and meets the intent of the architectural standards manual, but is all achieved in metal. To the bottom left, this is a concept that we're working with for our covered canopy, which is on the western side. And this would be something that, again, is architecturally distinct and unique and does not feel industrial, even though it's made out of metal. And then lastly, we have the bottom, which kind of shows, again, that transparency of the staircase. To the left, you can see the canopy awnings, and you can see the tree grates, so you can see the feel of that urban street frontage that we're trying to achieve. So in conclusion, we're requesting approval of our conditional use permit with the alternative compliance and the consideration to either amend or potentially remove item G based on if you feel that our architectural intent is successful. And I'll stand for questions.
Any questions for the applicant?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Holland?
One quick question. The closed off parking area that you've got, the gated parking, is there an intent to have storage or anything there, or is it mostly just for employee parking?
Mostly for employee parking. A lot of the trash that we have is actually quite expensive. Metal can be reused, recycled. Copper in particular is something that is very precious. And so before those can be recycled, they need to be stored in the trash dumpster. And so we would also have that for security so people aren't coming in and stealing their products before recycling.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Casnelli?
Can you elaborate on that? My concern there is that it would be, driving by and looking in there, it would look a little bit like a scrapyard. So can you elaborate on how that metal will be stored out there?
The metal that is to be recycled?
That or any metal that's any fresh metal that's brought in to be worked.
The metal that's intended to be worked, if we go back to the site plan. So on the very northern end of the facility, we have a roll-up door, and so the intent is that we can have vehicles that are delivering the product to be able to pull up alongside and sidle the facility, roll up that door, and be able to transload that into the facility. Rain affects the architectural characteristics of all of these products very distinctly, and it's something that they need to control. And so the intent in all likelihood is not to store product outside. They keep it inside, especially with your coppers and your stainless steel and stuff that's affected by the weather.
So is there, in that site plan, is there a designated area then where the recycled material will be kept?
So the recycled material would be in the dumpster, typically.
Okay.
Or it's going to be stored inside and then recycled.
Okay.
So I have a few questions about the exterior. I would anticipate that color will be significant. If there's going to be a large metal plane and you're not asking to have a second distinct field material, that the color that the applicant chooses to use is going to be significant. Is there any conversation about that at this point, considering that the buildings surrounding the area are in a very different material? What colors will they be? Will they be using the colors that you have in the rendering, or will it look like that, or is that just an example of the structure size, and is it actually going to be gray with a brown accent?
The gray is actually more of a white, and so it's a little bit lighter, and then the black is more of a black charcoal color. And so those are things that we're welcome to work with. But as far as like field accents, the screen walls that we're using, like on that eastern facade, are going to be a decorative perforated metal that's distinctly different color as well. And then in addition, versus having a solid color facade, even like the tilt-up panel to the north of us, we're going to have that banding that ties in with the rigid frame archway, and that will carry along as well. And so we'll have some distinctive ribbing along the corners of the building as well to help frame those.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Casnelli.
If staff were okay with it and there was still a requirement for an additional material, could it be something that were just like a band down at the base level. So for the first 5 feet, I don't know if that's something that fits the design standards.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Casanelli, are you speaking of like a band along the base to kind of like anchor it to the ground, or are you?
Correct. I was just looking, right down the street is Danik Gymnastics.
Okay.
And looking at that building, that's what, looks like, it appears that that's what is around that building. Maybe in the first 3, 4, 5 feet, there's stone material.
Yeah, that actually is one of the requirements of the Architectural Standards Manual for commercial districts, so that would be something that we would find acceptable. Bill and I were actually just talking to an option, since this is all administratively reviewed anyway with the design review, you technically don't approve the elevations. You can say whether, you can have an opinion, obviously, but it would be up to staff ultimately to determine whether it's appropriate with the Architectural Standards Manual or not. We do have a design review kind of exemption that you can apply for or that we can talk about, and for stuff like the elevation that's up on the upper left-hand side, I think we could work with you and call something more of a distinct field material if it's varying enough from the other metal materials, if that makes sense. That was directed toward Jeff and the entire commission, but.
Yeah, we prepared this presentation based on the dialogue that we were supposed to engage you about it.
I'm sorry, would you repeat that?
We prepared this presentation with the intent to engage you on it because that's what our understanding was.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, when we pre-apt with the applicant, that elevation in the left-hand corner, I think, was the one that they presented to us, and we were supportive of that. We said, yes, it doesn't comply with all the standards of the design manual, the architectural standards manual, but through the administrative process, they have the option of applying for the design exception. And it's just like, we treat it almost like an alternative compliance. So there's no fee, it's just in his narrative to staff, he has to explain why this design and these materials are equal to or better than what's in our design manual or design standards. And we've done that on occasion. So we didn't want to give Jeff the impression that you had the ability to prove something other than what's allowed through the design, the architectural standards manual. So if that's something that you're supportive of and you think you can support the design, just amend the condition to say apply for the design exception as allowed in the architectural standards manual, and give us some of that feedback where you want to see a block or something grounding the base of the building per those standards, but we can work on the materials through that ASM process if you'd like the exception.
Okay, so for clarification, I think I heard you mention about alternative compliance, and just wanted to clarify that that's specific to the plaza, the trees and the grates and the pavers. It is not specific to the distinct field materials. That is part of what is already written in the staff report, and the commission's decision will be whether we will require or that we will uphold staff's recommendation for the 2 distinct field materials or not. So I just wanted to clarify that they're 2 different. The alternative compliance will be decided by the planning director and not by the commission. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the applicant?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Seal.
In looking at the designs on the upper right corner, is that something that you're proposing on, my understanding is you were proposing on putting that on the side of the building?
Correct. Something of that nature would be proposed along Adkins.
So that's something that would just go on the east side of the building? Is that something that you've considered doing as an educational piece or an art piece with local facility, local educational facilities, schools, shops?
With all and very sincere respect, Commissioner Seal, everything about this building is an educational piece.
Right. I understand. I just want to try to make sure that I understand the concept of that going up, and you had alluded to the educational prospects of the building and being able to provide that, where just trying to understand if there's been some kind of outreach that's been done on that in order to provide an educational opportunity that then would help provide, the conditional aspect of or not the conditional, but the, get to what we're trying to provide as far as the aesthetics of the building?
So the majority of the metal screening on that side is going to be fabricated, one custom, but also with CNC and various technical means. And so each of those panels, as they are created, are something that can be showcased and used for education to the general public. And it's my understanding, in talking with the owners, that they're intending to engage elementary schools, high schools, basically anybody who would want to tour the facility. And with that, not only things inside the facility, but also the exterior of the facility itself would be elements that they can teach and educate how those were achieved.
Thank you. Would you share with us about any noise factors? In the application, it mentioned that they was going to be consistent with commercial areas, but that's I mean, there's a huge variety of possible concerns in that regard. So can you talk to us about what's involved with the noise? Is there going to be an issue for any of the neighboring properties?
The neighboring properties are commercial uses, and you want to kind of recap what those are again?
I believe the
Sure.
police
Madam
station
Chair,
is
members of
nearby.
the commission, it's industrial to the north, and then there's, I think it's like a machinery supply company to the west, commercial. So it's all CG surrounding to the west, south, and east, and then to the north it's industrial. And I believe this company and this one are like 8 to 5, so standard business hours. I don't.
Yeah, so based on those industrial and more commercial uses, we feel that we'll be right in line with the rest of them as far as sound production.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone signed up to testify?
No, Madam Chair.
Is there anyone in the room who would like to speak? Please come forward.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I've been paying attention all night at how I'm supposed to address you.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Okay. My name is Matt Schneider. My address is 125 West Taylor in Meridian. I own Forward Movement Training and Consulting. What's up, CJ? Good to see you. Right across the way from Excalibur. So for the last 5 years, I've been a neighbor of them. And so I can talk to you a couple of things that came up tonight. I actually would have brought some of the stuff that they've designed and made for us as gifts along the way, but they are entirely too heavy. But they are amazing. So the first thing I would say is that I come from a law enforcement background. I've been with the Ada County Sheriff's Office since 2006, so I'm always a little bit skeptical of people, especially in industrial areas. What I came to find right away is Jeremy and his team are some of the most best business owners that I think the city really has to offer. They are legitimately ninjas and artists when it comes to work. It's pretty crazy. So I've over the last 5 years, I've seen just a ton of stuff come out of their shop that if you go and you see any of the Parade of Homes, you'll see their stuff. Their stuff is featured in the Parade of Homes and have been for several years all throughout the city. The way they treat their clientele and the way they treat people is really pretty incredible. As it pertains to this project, though, the Commissioner Casanelli came up as far as like the waste and stuff goes. So they use virtually everything, but what they don't use, like right now as it stands, there's a dumpster outside of our spot, and their excess stuff goes into that, and then they have some recycle company come and take it. So at no point in the last 5 years have I ever seen anything that was outside of that space or was not like, there's never been an issue. It's all been contained to that. I've never heard any of our neighboring companies have any issues either. So you can't see, it looks like a dumpster space, and that's where it goes. As far as the noise goes, I oftentimes like to go over there just to see what it is they're doing, because they've got this sweet CNC machine that does this amazing stuff, and you can have a conversation right as they're working and crafting their stuff. So the noise is actually very, very minimal. The last thing I would say is that what they are looking to design, there's been lots of stuff where I've tried to wrap my mind around what it is that he's said he sees in his mind's eye, and a lot of times it's very difficult, but what comes out is an absolute masterpiece. So what they're proposing, I have no doubt, as a Meridian citizen, I live here, I work here, I own a business here, I have no doubt will be an absolute masterpiece when it comes to what is featured in this city. We may not be able to see it necessarily in the mind's eye, but what I would ask of the board and the commission is to not let something like a rule about two different colors or whatever that is stand the way from the artwork. I think of it like that art piece that's right at the kind of the intersection of Main and Meridian. It kind of splits off right there. It's all one piece, right? All one color, but it's a piece of work. It's a piece of art. So that's what I have to say to it. They do incredible work. They are legitimate artists, and I am excited to see what they come up with in this city. And I will eat lunch there in the patio if they serve it. So I will stand for questions.
Any questions?
No? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thanks.
Is there anything else the applicant would like to add, or any additional questions for the applicant? Oh, yes. Would you like to speak? Please come forward.
Thank you. My name's Jeremy Adams, owner of Excalibur Metal Design, and I live at 5953 North Channing Way in Meridian. Thanks, Matt, for that. That's awesome. We do very unique stuff. It's very hard to explain. People ask us all the time what we do, and we don't know what to say. We just do stuff with metal. And so someone will come to us and say, have you ever built this before? And we'll say no. But we say no problem, because we'll get it done. So our whole process with this building and our whole idea is to have something very unique and different and bring it. Because my wife and I moved to Meridian, like Jeff said, almost a decade ago. We live in Meridian. We're very happy for things like Costco and Winco, because we can walk to them. We love the way Meridian's going. We want to just add something that's different and new. And it kind of shows what we can do. And if you want to know who works with us, every one of us is here. So we're all very happy. We're a family. We're a team. My son and my wife are here as well. But this is all a learning thing for us. I mean, we know how to do metal. You come to ask us, make something from metal, and we'll do it. But this is all new. I didn't know what to expect, and I really appreciate all your guys' time. But I think I could answer some of the questions just like Matt did that you guys had. So the dumpster that would be out would be enclosed as well, because it's a requirement for dumpsters. And so all that scrap steel, which is very minimal because we use 99% of the stuff and we barely throw anything away. But it would be enclosed, and the most noise we would have is maybe a forklift unloading a truck. Everything else is done interior. And so we have very minimal noise in our production process as well. But I also did have a question for Commissioner Seal, if to ask what you were requiring, or what you were. It's very interesting to me, the educational outreach, because we want to be an educational outreach facility where people can come in and we can teach them. But to have something educational for the side, I'm very interested in that, and we're very interested in coming up with something like that. But did you have something in mind for that?
Well, I mean, as it pertains to the project, not necessarily, but just, always advocating for education in our communities and the ability to reach out, especially to a shop program or something like that. I mean, shop programs, FFA, things like that are kind of diminishing in the schools, where your business could bring something to us, to a school, to a, not necessarily a school, but an educational facility that might help partner with making the, basically the artwork that would go on the side of the buildings that might substantiate, altering the, the outlay of the building or the look of the building that would be something that, is a win for everybody.
Absolutely. We're looking into that. Anything we can do that can outreach to education, to alternative education, we want. And that's why we've designed our building to have that community feel. I mean, we want people to just walk in and say, what are you guys doing today? And go up in the observation deck, or we're going to have an observation room that we call a classroom, that you'll be able to just sit in and watch what we're doing. And nothing that we do we feel is proprietary to the city of Meridian, because we work here and we want people to come in and see what we do. And we're very proud of it. But I mean, that being said, we have reached out, people have reached out to us. We've had some apprentices come in as well to apprentice with us. But most times in our industry, it seems that people go to work for a trailer manufacturing company or building heavy machinery, and they get burned out. We're looking for people young and early. Every one of us that work here are artists, and we all love our job. And it's really hard to find people that love their job like we do. And it seems they get burned out really easy. And so we want our facility to bring in and start early, high school, college, with CWI we've been working with as well, apprenticeships-wise, to bring people in before they get burned out and say, hey, I can have a lot of fun doing this. It's not just a welding job. We're fabricators and we enjoy it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Your passion shows through, and it's wonderful to have someone come and make a presentation that's excited about what you're doing. It's great. And you're making me excited about it. And I hope we get an invitation. Part of what we do is talking about what's great for the community, and also, of course, this little technical side of what we do too. Just one more little technical question about the deliveries. What kind of delivery hours do you have? And I assume that your facility will be set up for the trucks to be able to move around easily. How often the deliveries? What kind of?
Yeah, so we like the banker hours. We like, not working too much. Sometimes it burns us out. But we tend to get deliveries maybe once or twice a month. Okay. And they're very minimal. A lot of what we do, 75% of our stuff is design. So we do a lot of design, and that's why our offices and showroom are so big, because we spend a lot of time doing that. But our productions take a long time. So if we work on a product, it could take all week to do. And so with very minimal projects or raw materials. And so it just depends on the project as well. But we try to get 1 or 2 shipments a month, and maybe 1 for a majority would be.
Great, thank you very much. Any additional questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here who would like to speak? Please go forward.
Sorry, 3 strikes, you're out.
Still Sally Reynolds, 1166 West Bacall Street in Meridian, 83646. Just as I was watching this, even before he got up, and that's a tough act to follow, but as I was looking at their exterior elevations, and I just kept thinking, this is so wonderful. I mean, they have trees breaking up the side. They have banding that they have been respectful to their neighbors to try and fit into the community where they're building, where people are already existing. And even though their product is so different, they're being respectful of those neighbors. And I'm not a huge contemporary modern person. I did live in Seattle for 4 years, so you thought maybe I would have been converted. But as far as that goes, I definitely think that this is just a beautiful facility. I love the patio. I love welcoming the community, the little area on the side, and how they've mixed organic material with metal is so innovative, and I think that it's what the community needs. Honestly, I wish that it was somewhere off of Eagle or Chinden where it could really be showcased. And I think being a family business, that's what Meridian's about. And I would love it if we had more projects like this. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I rescind my comment because that was exactly what I was thinking.
Okay, is there anything the applicant would like to add? Okay. Excellent. Can I get a motion to close the public hearing?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Castanelli?
I move we close the public hearing. Excalibur Metal Design, item H-2018-0139.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to close the public hearing for H20180139. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed? Motion carries.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Holland.
I'm going to jump in first because
You're excited.
I like economic development, obviously. That's what I do for a living. So I wish that you could just replicate the entrepreneurial spirit of the company and the staff and everyone that showed up tonight. So I wish we could replicate it and do 16 of these in Meridian because I think it's a great sounding concept and looks like it's well thought out. Design touches. It's going to be a great addition to the community, great expansion, and it's always great to see Meridian companies expanding and growing here. So we appreciate that for sure. I also like that, there's great ties for the apprenticeship program, which is something the Department of Labor is really focusing on, something that CWI is really focusing on. So as far as the economic development portion of the comp plan, I think it fits in perfectly with the mission and vision of what the city's looking for economic development. I don't really have any concerns when I'm looking at it. The only other note I would make is that a lot of the projects that are coming through the valley right now that are looking for locations, national companies, because of technology changes, there's a big shift in commercial companies looking a little more industrial, where it's more of a commercial look and more of a commercial feel, but they've got industrial process because CNC machining and technology's gotten so far advanced that they can do some really cool stuff with it. So I don't have any concerns with the way that the site plan's laid out. I think it makes sense with having the gated parking in the back because of the nature of the materials they work with, just their own security. So no concerns for me.
Any other thoughts?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Cascarelli?
I was totally echo that. I was going to say the same thing, and congratulations to you guys for the expansion, for the growth. That's awesome, and it's fun to see, and I think it's a cool building. My only concern was I didn't want to see a pile of scrap metal in the back. I don't think that's going to be a problem. Doesn't sound like they have much waste, and what there will be kept in the screened area there where the dumpster is. There's Intermountain Wood Products is right down the street there, and they have heavy truck traffic all day long. So the noise and traffic coming out of this, as far as deliveries and whatnot, won't even. I think will be a non-factor. So I think it's great. I don't think we should go remove that condition, leave that in, let them work with staff on the design. I think they'll figure out a great design on that.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Seal.
I totally agree. I'm kind of excited about this, and this is my first night, so didn't expect that. But to be honest, I agree that we should probably recommend the exception to the elevations because I'm kind of excited to see what they would bring, with what they've talked about, especially making it something that could be educational in nature. That's pretty exciting, and I think whatever they put on the side of the building is they're going to want it to represent their business and what they're willing to offer. So I think it's going to be something that our community would probably look at very favorably.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Fitzgerald.
I completely agree. I don't want to force something that where we're adding stone or wood that doesn't make sense for their business, doesn't make sense for the design. I commend you guys for your whole family and for your team to be here. We appreciate the community support and kudos to the architect. You guys did a great job of bringing in a vision, a sense of place that I think that neighborhood needs. And so I would like to put it somewhere where it'd be center in town, rather than an industrial area. But that's just because I like metal and wood, or metal and glass. So you can come and design my house, is what. But I think you did an exceptional job. I think it will add a ton to that part of the world. I used to live in Woodbridge, which is right on the street, and so I am excited for the design, and I appreciate the work you guys do. And I'm going to come and see if I can have a bid on something. Now I'm excited we got something.
Madam Chair, I think it's important to be unanimous. This is a marvelous project to see a family come together and grow a business long enough to get to the point where you can actually own and afford your own building is tremendous. And it's nice to be part of it. Thank you.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Holland?
If anybody else has discussion, I don't want to cut anyone off, but I would be happy to make a motion if we're at that point.
I would like to share some thoughts.
No, you can't.
Hey, I'm leading the meeting. I agree with everything that the commission has said, and but also thank you that you are choosing to open this to the community, because that's not something you have to do, and I think it's fantastic that you are doing it. And I know that also, as a business owner, creates concern and risk and liability to have people come through, and insurance costs and all those good things, but to have it open to the community is just absolutely fantastic, and I really appreciate that you're doing that, because I would imagine that it's not easy to be watched when you're being creative and designing something, and so it's very kind of you to make that something that is open. And I love glass. I think glass is beautiful, and I think it's just the facade of the building is just really fantastic. It's lovely, and I agree. I wish it was in a more obvious area in the community. So. One quick thing I wanted to find out from staff is, as far as the distinct field materials, is there a section of the staff report that would need to be changed in order to reflect the
Item G.
Section G.
Section G? I read Section G, and I did not.
It's in a specific. Keep going.
Okay.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, we'll pull up the staff report and see if there's anything we need to modify.
Discusses
and make a
landscaping.
recommendation.
So,
Madam Chair, Bill, would it be appropriate if in our motion we just said that we would modify item G to work with staff to meet whatever requirements are necessary, but that the applicant could have freedom, flexibility?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Holland, I would say yes, that would be appropriate. It is, I'm going to find the actual number for you, so you can include that in your motion if you'd like, but just note that they can work with staff on the design exception, and we can.
Page 12.
For the requirement for the two field metals, or two field materials. So it's condition 8.1G. If you want to include it in your motion.
Thank you.
I would support that wholeheartedly.
Commissioner Holland?
All right, Madam Chair. I move we, after considering all staff, applicant, and public testimony, I move to approve file number H-2018-0139 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of February 7th, 2019, with the following modification for item 8.1.G, that the applicant would work with staff on the design requirement and aesthetics to meet, let them have their creativity but still meet the city requirements.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the conditional use permit for application H20180139. All those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Good job.
Bill wants to know if you design cell towers.
We appreciate you hanging. Thank you for hanging. Thank you very much for hanging in there with us tonight, everybody. Okay, can I get one more motion, please?
Madam Chair, before we adjourn, I just wanted to remind the commission that there's a joint meeting on the 21st. It's beginning at 4 o'clock, so hopefully that's on your calendars.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Everyone catch that?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any idea how long that's going to last?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, we'll start at 4, and we got a hearing right at 6 o'clock, so it's gonna be a full one.
That's our regular scheduled.
The regular schedule at 6, yeah.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Fitzgerald, did you? Oh.
That was me. I move to adjourn.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to close the public hearing, Planning and Zoning Commission hearing for February 7th, 2019. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.